any sort, and anybody who does that violates the Constitution. And anybody who does that violates the Constitution. So get the clip, I'll give direction. Thank you. Majority Leader.
On my statement. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I was hoping it's on my statement, although if I could also just add on that, Honorable Speaker, I have actually viewed that clip. I don't know whether the gentleman on the clip is an actual religious leader or just draped in Islamic religious clothing, but what he was saying is very unfortunate, and NCIC, I want to agree with the Deputy Speaker, NCIC has indeed failed this country, because that person, the kind of things he was saying is not just against a community, but also against religions, especially the Christians living in Lamu and the coastal region. And Honorable Speaker, I do hope the Honorable Mwenje will be able to furnish your office with that clip so that you may issue the necessary directives, especially to NCIC, DCI, and the Inspector General of Police. That gentleman should be answering in court, not being discussed in the National Assembly. I think you feel very sweet being discussed by the August House. Honorable Speaker, allow me to read the Thursday statement on behalf of the House Business Committee pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 44.2a. On behalf of the House Business Committee, which met on Monday, 25th November 2024, to prioritize business for consideration during this week. As members will recall, last week the House adopted a motion resolving to hold additional sittings for purposes of considering priority business ahead of the long recess. I therefore want to urge committees to expedite any pending business to enable its conclusion. I also encourage members not to tire in attending the plenary sessions, some of which are extended, so that the House concludes with all that it needs to finish with before we commence the long recess at the end of next week. Honorable Speaker, members will note that today and tomorrow sittings are dedicated to consideration of individual members' business. Therefore, I urge members to be present and ready to prosecute their business. Further, with regards to business schedule for tomorrow, Friday, 29th November 2024, the House is expected to consider the following bills at various stages, if not concluded today. One is Committee of the Whole House on the County Government Revenue Raising Process Bill of 2023 and the Cooperative Bill 2024. Two is the second reading of the following bills: the Higher Education Loans Board Amendment Bill number 22 of 2022. I believe this is a bill by Honorable Joyce Kamene. That's why I'm saying we have allocated time this afternoon and tomorrow, because many of these bills were due to lapse at the end of this session. Therefore, members will appreciate that the House Business Committee did consider even private members' bills, not just government bills, to be prioritized so that they do not lapse. Two is a political parties bill, Amendment Bill of 2022. C, the Equalization Fund Administration Bill, Senate Bill number 14 of 2023. D is a Public Finance Management Amendment Bill of 2022. Honorable Speaker, if you note, all these are either private members' bills or committee bills. And the Universities Amendment Bill of 2023 and the National Police Service Commission Amendment Bill of 2024. Additional, Honorable Speaker, debate will also be undertaken on the following motions, should they not be concluded today. One, consideration of reports on financial statements of state corporations in Nyanza region. Two, consideration of agreement on the establishment of the Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI. Three, report on the alleged unfair trade practices by foreign investors in Kenya. Four, third report on consideration of the audited accounts of specified state corporations. Five, report of the extraordinary session of the 6th Pan-African Parliament. And six, report on the performance audit report on the provision of services to persons with disabilities by the National Council for Persons with Disability. Honorable Speaker, with regards to business scheduled for Monday next week, the House is expected to consider second reading of the following bills, some of which are listed in today's order paper. One is the Business Laws Amendment Bill of 2024. Two, the Tax Procedures Amendment number 2 Bill of 2024. Three is the Higher Education Loans Board Amendment Bill of 2022. Four is the Political Parties Amendment Bill of 2022. 5, the Equalization Fund Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 14 of 2023. 6, the Universities Amendment Bill of 2023. And 7, the National Police Service Commission Amendment Bill of 2024. Additionally, Honorable Speaker, debate will also be undertaken on the following motions, should they not be concluded tomorrow. 1, consideration of reports on financial statements of state corporations in Nyanza region. 2, consideration of agreement on the establishment of the Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI. 3, report on the alleged unfair trade practices by foreign investors in Kenya. 4, third report on consideration of the audited accounts of specified state corporation. 5, report of the extraordinary session of the 6th Pan-African Parliament, PAP. And 6, report on the performance audit reports on the provision of services to persons with disabilities by the National Council for Persons with Disabilities. Honorable Speaker, with regards to attendance of cabinet secretaries to answer to questions in plenary, I wish to inform the House that due to priority business scheduled for next week, the cabinet secretaries that were slotted to appear on Wednesday, 4th December 2024, have been rescheduled to a later date. In conclusion, Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee shall reconvene again on Monday, 2nd December, to schedule business for the rest of that week. I now wish to lay this statement on the table of the House. Honorable Speaker, just to reiterate again that there are quite a number of private members' bills that the House Business Committee did prioritize for consideration so that we save them from lapsing at the end of next week when we proceed on recess. Also, to remind members that we have a sitting which we expect the Honorable Aluke to be present on Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning and afternoon. And Honorable Speaker, when we meet for the House business next week on Monday, the committee will review whether there will be need for any additional sittings to be able to expedite with all the priority business that has been scheduled. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
And remind members to get on the SGR on the 6th morning. Yes.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for that reminder. We are prioritizing this business, and even tomorrow, Honorable Aluke, Honorable Member for Kandui, tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m., there is a sitting, and we expect that you'll be there representing the people of Bungoma. When we finish with this priority business, members, on the 6th of December, as the Speaker has indicated, at 6 a.m., the SGR train to Mombasa will be leaving, and you are all expected to be accompanying the Honorable Speaker on the SGR ride to Mombasa for the IALA Games. Both those who are in the teams, those who are in the dancing team like Millie Odhiambo, and those in the cheering team like Junet Mohammed.
Junet?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to seek your indulgence on a matter, Mr. Speaker, that is of importance, Mr. Speaker. Very high importance, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Parliament has been under attack, Mr. Speaker, for quite some time now. From certain quarters, Mr. Speaker, the religious leaders and other groups, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are not here by accident. We are not members of Parliament by accident, Mr. Speaker. We were elected by the people of Kenya, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, some of the positions that are sought after in this country, Mr. Speaker, is to be a member of Parliament. Including religious leaders, contest for these positions, Mr. Speaker. During the elections, every constituency has a minimum of 10 to 15 aspirants, Mr. Speaker. Minimum. Some more, 20, 30.
There is one in Kisii that had 45 candidates.
You can see, Mr. Speaker, you are right. One in Kisii had 45. But, Mr. Speaker, you cannot bastardize a position that has been given by the Constitution and people donating their sovereignty to them, Mr. Speaker, and you say that Parliament is useless, Parliament is captured, Parliament is this and that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just now, this afternoon, this sitting where we are today, We have just passed almost 5 bills, Mr. Speaker, that you read the third reading.
Very important.
Very important bills. Bills on higher education, bills on finance, Public Finance Management Act. All those bills, Mr. Speaker, are being passed in this House to make the lives of the citizens of this country better, to help the governance of this country, to make the things easier for the Kenyans so that they can get services from the executive, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I feel very, very bad when I see members taking, Parliament a joke. Mr. Speaker, Parliament is a very sacred place. It's not a small place, Mr. Speaker. But if there is no Parliament, there is no country. Because there is no taxation without Parliament. Even the executive cannot collect any money, Mr. Speaker, without Parliament. There is no democracy, as the KG has put it. Mr. Speaker, it has become now a fashion that people just stand on a queue, look for the media, and say, oh, Parliament has failed, without pinpointing and telling us what have we failed in. What is this that you expected of us that we have not done, Mr. Speaker? You must hold people accountable with facts. And not to generalize and just say, I have been in this Parliament long enough. If you are not happy with other aspects of governance, don't throw it to Parliament, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
And then also, you cannot blame members of Parliament who come from the ruling party why they are supporting their government. Yes. People have been elected on parties.
Yes.
People went to be elected on Kenya Kwanza, others went to be elected on Azimio, others went to ODM. Mr. Speaker, you cannot blame a member of Parliament from the ruling party. Why is he supporting his government? He made a decision in 2022 to run on that party and to support that government. Mr. Speaker, this is the place we need to speak. If the church can speak in the church, we will also speak in Parliament. No, that's the truth of the matter. We are going to speak here. Everybody has a mouth to say, and everybody has a forum to talk. If there is no mutual respect, leadership must be respected. We are speaking on behalf of people. Every member of Parliament here has been given mandate by people. Nobody is here invited. Nobody has come here under the invitation of anyone here. Everyone has been elected. Some of the members here, like the women reps, have come here with over 400,000 votes. It's not a joke, Mr. Speaker. People don't know how difficult it is to convince 400,000 people to vote for you. People don't know that, Mr. Speaker. People don't know how difficult it is to wake up people at 5 a.m. in the morning to queue so that they can vote for you, Mr. Speaker. People don't know that. We respect our religious leaders. We respect them so much because they are the people who guide us spiritually. But Mr. Speaker, politics is different from religion. Completely different. If you think there's an issue that you're not happy with, as a leader of another sector, a religious leader, or even whichever leadership you have, address members of Parliament with dignity and decorum. Don't belittle them. Don't make it as though they are nobodies. Mr. Speaker, these are serious people who are passing laws in this House. Laws that are going to be used to govern you yourself who are attacking them on TV. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask members here to stand up for their rights. The only institution that does not have a union is Parliament. Other institutions are defended by the unions, Mr. Speaker. We have now to become 416 union members here. And especially people like attacking the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, this National Assembly has passed under your leadership for the last 2 years over 100 bills, which have been assented to by the President, which have become laws, which are helping the country. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I want to say, let us rise up for our rights. We are not going to accept this now lying down. We are going to stand up for our rights, and we are going to become the union leaders. As the minority leader, as the majority leader, now we are going to become union leaders of Parliament, Mr. Speaker. And we will defend, because institutions of governance must be respected. And Parliament is one of those institutions. Parliament has been created by the Constitution. So if we don't respect our institutions, how do we respect the mosque? How do we respect the church? If you're not respecting the institution that is used for governance. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge people outside there to be respectful. Otherwise, you will know why chicken doesn't have milk. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, I will allow you, but I also want to point out the leadership of this House, including Majority Leader, Junet, my able deputy, the whips, the chairman and chairpersons of committees. We assembled in Naivasha for a meeting, a round-table meeting with KEPSA and a meeting of leadership. And one newspaper with wide circulation 2 days ago had a screaming headline that the Speaker of the National Assembly had said that members were stealing money from their bodyguards. And they were purporting to quote the outcome of the meeting where both Junet, Mwenje, Ichungwa, and all of you, Alice, you are. They were even purporting to quote some 3 members of this House as the source of information, even went on to write an editorial to call members every inconceivable name, greedy, and all sorts of things. Far from the truth, because in Chungwa, you know, we were in Naivasha, and there was no discussion of any sort about members. And yours truly here will be the last person to bastardize members of this House, having been here for as many as you can remember. So Junet is right. The Speaker is leaving the chair for another urgent meeting. My able deputy will take the chair and allow members to make comments on that important issue. Deputy Speaker, you can take the chair. Majority Leader, you can have a go. Osoro.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also rise to support the sentiments and the concerns as raised by the Honorable Junet Mohammed. Honorable Speaker, it is very sad that this House has actually been turned as a punching bag, and people demonize everything about this House. That where we pass laws that pertain to the common mind, Honorable Speaker, and that is exactly what we do, which we actually do very, very well every day, and sometimes sitting up to late into the night, Honorable Speaker, the media and even the members of the clergy do not raise concerns. They do not talk about it. But on the issue that touches on the executive, you hear them say that, we haven't had anybody, speak about it in the National Assembly or in the floor of the House, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we implore on the members of the public and even the members of the clergy to be watching proceedings of this House. There is no matter of national importance that hasn't passed through this floor, Honorable Speaker, and that hasn't been spoken to, Honorable Speaker. But it is so sad that even on matters that touch on the public concerns, the issues that are so direct to the public people, like today, Honorable Speaker, we are faced with femicide, Honorable Speaker, where women are being killed and young girls are being killed all over. You have not heard the church speak about it, Honorable Speaker. You've not heard the clergy utter a single word about it, Honorable Speaker. I mean, really. But if it was an issue, Honorable Speaker, that touches on the members of the parliament, this House has even created a platform where we are raising concerns about the femicide. We expect the members of the clergy, Honorable Speaker, who are leaders also, to give us accolades and appreciate us and say, at least this House is doing 1, 2, 3 on matters that are, pertain, matters that are affecting the women of this country, Honorable Speaker. But they are not saying, Honorable Speaker, that. I want to invite the members of the clergy in particular, Honorable Speaker, to the good book that they teach. Because as a good student of the good book, as a person that went through the Sunday school, right from age 3, Honorable Speaker, to date, I have read the good book in the book of Romans chapter 13, that there is no leadership on earth that has not been placed by God. I mean, which God is that you tell us to preach when you can't respect the God that has placed the leadership, Honorable Speaker? That we only matter, Honorable Speaker, sometimes when we go to the church. If you ask any member of the parliament, Honorable Speaker, their booths or their offices are full of cards, Honorable Speaker, invitation cards for fundraising, Honorable Speaker. It is shocking. At one point, Honorable Speaker, I attended one church along Nairobi, Honorable Speaker, somewhere here with the former deputy president, who is now the president. And Honorable Speaker, they denied members or the leadership, the members of parliament to speak. But immediately we finished, they gave us a bill of 6 million, a need of 6 million, Honorable Speaker. Is our importance, very important to the extent of our contributions, Honorable Speaker, honestly. And then when such contributions are made, Honorable Speaker, even upon their request, then they go out there to play with the public gallery and say we do not need members, or leadership to contribute, Honorable Speaker. This is sad. And like Honorable Majority Leader said the other day, even the members of the clergy that said they want to return the funds, and Honorable Majority Leader will speak after me, they have not actualized, they have not refunded the funds, Honorable Speaker. To date, they have not said, okay, fine, this is the check that we said, this is the check, take it back, build, because we'll build. We want to confine ourselves, Honorable Speaker, to the good book again, in the book of Haggai, chapter 1, Honorable Speaker, verse 7, that we go up to the mountain and pick the trees so that you can build the church of God. You will not gag me from contributing in building the house of God because you don't like my political views, Honorable Speaker. This thing of making politicians demonized. We are demonized, Honorable Speaker, in the banks. When you go to open a bank account, you are referred as a PEP, politically exposed person, that you've got to declare that. If you are doing somewhere in business, they say, you're a politician, you will need to declare interest. When you go for if you lose your seat and you go for an interview, then you're told, you're a politically exposed person, you need to be. In any case, Honorable Speaker, we should actually be applauded. A person leading a county or a constituency with 100,000 voters, Honorable Speaker, that is an experienced manager that needs to be a manager and a CEO of Equity Bank, Honorable Speaker, which only has got an employee portfolio of 2,000 people, Honorable Speaker, or 3,000. But what happens? You lose your seat, or you are out of politics, or you appear like you've been politically inclined to some place which is again within the law under Article 37, the rights of association. You are demonized, you are insulted, you go out there, people believe that you are taking their money. What is with this obsession of a person thinking that somebody is poor because somebody else is rich? Why can't you just respect other people's rights like you want the others to respect you, Honorable Speaker? What we are saying, Honorable Speaker, that we must learn to embrace divergent views. You have your view as a member of the clergy. I have my view. You have your view as a person from the media, or the media for the state. I have my view. The divergence of views is not wrong, and that makes it democracy. We all can't think the same way. Stop demonizing members of parliament, and particularly members of the National Assembly. And when you have a challenge, you want to rush to us. Anytime you have a challenge, members of parliament. When I pass through the streets, Mheshimiwa, Mheshimiwa. When I go everywhere, Mheshimiwa. When I go to Mheshimiwa. But when I come, when people go there somewhere in the media, Honorable Speaker, they insult us, Honorable Speaker. So please.
Let's give other members a chance.
Yeah, as I conclude, I want to conclude, Honorable Speaker, and say people should respect this House, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much.
Let me give, okay. I'll come to you.
Mike. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, let me first thank the Honorable Junet for raising this issue. Because, Honorable Speaker, at times we are afraid to speak for ourselves because we'll be seen to be fighting the church or religious leaders. And let me thank Honorable Junet, because the issue he has raised is not an issue where he is raising an issue that is fighting anybody, but rather fighting for ourselves as members of parliament. Honorable Speaker, if you can protect me from the member for Kericho, who is conversing in Kalenjin in the house. The book of Hebrews, Honorable Speaker, 13:16 says, but to do good and to communicate, forget not. For with such sacrifices God is pleased. Obey them that have the rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls as they that must give account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you. That is the word of the Lord. And that word, Honorable Speaker, is the word I would like to remind our religious leaders, including my own moderator of the Presbyterian Church, the Reverend Thegu, whom I saw last night on TV admonishing this House that this House is captured, that when the executive wants us to pass bills, we pass them with lightning speed. Of course, we pass them with lightning speed because that is what the people elected us to do. And we do that because we are actualizing the manifesto of what we sold to the people of Kenya, because we want to remain true to the people and to God. Therefore, because you are my moderator, you cannot admonish me simply because you hail from Nyeri and you think the impeachment process moved with speed. That speed is what is expected of us under the Constitution. The Constitution gives us timelines as to when and how you prosecute an impeachment process. And let me say, Honorable Speaker, because the Honorable Juneta has done good to raise this issue, we must not be afraid to tell our religious leaders that even when we do good, as the book of Hebrews tells us, when we give in church, we do not give in church to please the bishop, the moderator, the reverend, not even the church members, the congregations in our churches. We do it because the good book in the Bible tells us, do good and communicate because it is pleasing to God. I never go to church to please my bishop. I never go to church to please my moderator. I neither go to church to satisfy the whims of my reverend. I go to church and do what I do because it is pleasing to my God, and we shall continue to do it. And if our religious class imagines they can intimidate us, I have never walked into a church, Honorable Speaker, and asked a single religious leader to give me an opportunity to speak to church. I am glad I patronize a church that's not one of the mainstream churches in Nairobi, together with the member for Kiminini, the Honorable Kakai Bisau. And we go there and we sit in church, we listen to the sermon, and we leave. We never seek anybody to give us an opportunity to address the congregation. When they are fundraising in church, I have never seen a single politician invite himself to a fundraising in church. But the church leaders must not make it look like we invite ourselves to churches to contribute money. We have many other places we can take this money. Honorable Speaker, it is true what the majority whip is saying. I accompanied the president to Soweto, the Catholic Church in Soweto, in Embakasi East. When we sat to have a cup of tea with the church leadership of that church. They are the ones who sought the president's help and our help, together with that of the governor for Nairobi, to build a house for the father. They also sought help with the road. That road to Soweto has already been advertised in the papers for its rehabilitation. When I saw the Archbishop of the Catholic Church, with all due respect to the Archbishop of the Catholic Church, write a letter that they will return some money to the president, I can confirm to the country and to this house, not a shilling, not a cent has been returned to the president. And when it is returned, there are hundreds of churches who have sent me messages and are sending the president messages. They are waiting for the money to be returned. They are willing to receive the money to do the work of God because it is pleasing to God, not to man, not to the bishop, not to the archbishop. Honorable Speaker, respect is earned, and it is two-way. We respect our church leaders, and they must earn that respect. If you speak at me, I'll speak back at you. If you respect me, I will respect you back. Honorable Speaker, I had my own moderator of the Presbyterian Church yesterday say things that I would not expect a church leader to say and speak of leaders. Because, again, if you read the book of Romans, it calls Romans 13, I think verse 1 to 4. It calls on everybody to obey authority because there is no authority that is not ordained by God himself. God is not the religious leaders. God anoints religious leaders to serve his people. God anoints political leaders and other secular leaders to lead his people. And we all serve the same people. Therefore, I know we all come from backgrounds. And I know some of these religious leaders have issues because of where they come from. But they must divorce their personal feelings from their church work. At times there are things I also want to say because based on where I come from. But I remember I am a leader in this country, a national leader. There are certain things I cannot say or do as a leader. I want to call for that wisdom from our religious leaders. I want to call for them to respect authority as commanded in the Bible. I want them to help this country. Some of the issues that I see them pointing fingers to government on are issues of morality, are issues that they should be dealing with in society. Be it femicide, be it the growing trend of LGBTQs and everything, Honorable Speaker. Be it issues touching on corruption. I hear members saying even the Anti-Corruption Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is headed by a bishop. Yes. And a good bishop for that matter, and we wish him well. But all these societal challenges are challenges of society that we must address them together as leaders. Both the political leadership and church leadership, or religious leaders, not just church, even our Muslim leaders. And I want to ask our leadership to work together. We cannot deal with the issues that we have seen, the challenges we have seen with femicide, challenges with our children, without working together. Honorable Speaker, our schools, if there is some moral decadence, it begins from our schools. Many of our schools are sponsored by churches. And even public schools, we have made effort in numerous public schools to be under the sponsorship of churches under the chaplaincy of churches. But that is where the rains are starting to beat us. The only reason you see men doing the kind of bad things they are doing to young girls is because there's something we lost in our moral upbringing. Not just as men, but as a society. But that is the work of the church. Where is the church? I do not see the church in those issues. The church now is more in politics than anything else, and we welcome them to politics. Indeed, this house that they are admonishing has elected bishops and reverends and others nominated, like Bishop Kosgei. Canon Naomi of the Anglican Church is a deputy whip who whips members to come and vote for bills because that is what they are elected to do. Therefore, let me just thank Honorable Junet, Honorable Speaker, but with tremendous respect, ask our church leaders. When you point a finger at a leader, look at the four that are pointing at yourself. When you admonish corruption, don't just talk about the fight against corruption, practice it. It cannot be that my money when I was a business person, and I am still a business person, was not corrupt money, but when I'm elected as a member of parliament, now I am told this is corrupt money. It can't be. You know, it is so interesting, Honorable Speaker, that they are now even choosing which political leader to speak, which one you can receive money from, which one you like, which one you don't like, which political party you like, which political party you don't like. Honorable Speaker, let me just call for mutual respect. Because I am a Christian, a practicing one, and living as one, I will live by the Bible and according to the Bible. I can read the Bible, I can interpret the Bible, I know what the Bible tells me about giving, I know what the Bible tells me about respect for church leaders. I will respect them, but I also expect them to respect those in authority back. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, let me thank the Honorable Junet for having raised that matter.
Honorable members, I can see that there's a lot of interest. So let's agree that we 3 minutes each. Yeah. Yes, I'll get to you. You'll get a chance. The Honorable Kainan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have a country. The Sovereign Republic of Kenya was born out of the sheer hard work of the great men and women who fought the colonialists. And out of their struggle, they have given us a constitution that we have amended over the years. The latest being August 2010 Constitution, which is one of the most progressive constitutions in Africa. Madam Speaker, we are also lucky as a country that we do not go through militarism. And I think because we are spoiled, because we have not seen the effects of military dictatorship that has engulfed other parts of Africa. Madam Speaker, the framers of the current constitution were not fools when they equated sovereignty, you are a seasoned lawyer, to representation. I want each one of us now to expand our horizon of thinking. Why did the framers of the current constitution equate representation to sovereignty? The reason is this. God has ordained leadership, and Madam Speaker, and the fathers of democracy. And you remember those old days in Greece where people used to gather together a whole year, agree. Representative democracy, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, is one of the most sought after governance platform in the world, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the presidency has been criminalized. Offensive statements, malicious statements, capricious statements has been used against the president. Madam Speaker, again, let us also remember we have a head of state who doubles also as the head of government. And Madam Speaker, in our own definition, again, within the constitutional architecture, the head of state, the head of government is one with 3 branches. Many people have interpreted this to mean that there are 3 different, conflicting, competing departments. No, we only have one head of state, and that is the person with the instrument of power to govern the sovereign Republic of Kenya, and that's the president. Let's respect the president. Let's respect the leadership. Madam Speaker, I want to ask my colleagues here, the reason why we are being pushed, I think somehow we have also failed. We need to put our foot down. That newspaper, Madam Speaker, that characterized members in a very negative light for a budget that does not even exist should have been sanctioned by the leadership, Madam Speaker. We have failed. The Speaker should have sanctioned that newspaper either to elaborate or apologize. We have not done it. So we have allowed them to go away with a mistake. To the best of my recollection and what I've gathered, there is no budget for members. That budget that has been alluded to is not even in the current budget. How will you pay for, how do you get paid for something that is not budgeted for? So that was malicious. Madam Speaker, equally also, civility is not a sign of cowardice. The fact that we have restrained ourselves, we want to also add, let us demand for respect. Let us also ask our colleagues on the other side, whether you are in the church, whether you are a trade activist, whether you are in the village, respect is two-way. These members have been elected by the people, graciously, and they fought hard. And therefore, if you don't respect them, luckily, our election cycle is time-bound. It is 5 years. If you think you are the most qualified woman, the most qualified sheikh, the most qualified bishop, wait for 2027, present yourself to the electorate, get elected, come and do what you think is right.
Thank you. Thank you. The Honorable, we agreed 3 minutes so that every member can get a chance.
This issue of mob justice, you go to a church because you think you cannot be held accountable. You condemn everybody. We are caught in disaster, Madam Speaker. I want to appeal to the leadership of the churches and the mosques and the trade unionists and everybody else. It is incumbent upon to respect ourselves, to respect the leadership, and also to respect those whom you have elected. When time comes, use the power of the ballot to vote them out. Don't abuse them. God does not allow that. And there's nothing Islamic, there's nothing, Madam Speaker, revealing about that. Let's respect the leadership, and please,
Thank
way
you.
we can have a flourishing, vibrant, functioning democracy that everybody will be proud of. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Dagoretti South, 3 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I must truly thank the Honorable Junet for bringing this matter to the floor of the House. The truth of the matter is that this country is treading dangerously. The moment you have an affront on institutions, it does not matter whether that institution is the presidency or parliament or the clergy, any civilization or any democracy needs institutions intact. Madam Speaker, we have a great example in a country called Sudan. Sudan went down the route that we want to go now. They broke down their institutions. Today, those who are clamoring for the fall of the presidency, clamoring for the fall of a government, today are crying, wishing that they would be having a government or a president. Madam Speaker, it is the good book in the book of Daniel that tells me that he changes the times and the seasons. He lifts up kings and he removes kings. He gives wisdom to those who are wise and knowledge to those who are discerning. Madam Speaker, this good book that I read is the one that tells me that leaders are to be respected. And we are not calling upon someone to respect Kiarie or to respect President Ruto. You might have your differences with President Ruto, but you cannot sacrilege the institution of presidency. The Institute of Parliament is sacrilegious, Madam Speaker, to have an affront like the one we are seeing from the leaders of the clergy. But most importantly, Madam Speaker, those who claim to be calling out evil, to be calling out injustice, to be calling out immorality, need to check themselves first, Madam Speaker. Because it is the good book again, in the book of Matthew, that tells me, why do you look at the log in your neighbor's eye? Why do you look at the speck in your neighbor's eye while you have a log in your own? What is happening in these institutions called religious institutions? There is nothing that they are calling out other people on that they are not doing, Madam Speaker. There is immorality in our churches. There is theft and thievery in our churches. There is a lot of evil things that are happening there. So, Madam Speaker, the point here is let the politics be done by politicians and let the clergies be true to the call that they are called to. And it is very clear in the Bible, the place of the religious leader and the place of the political leader. Because we have not traded places. We are not in the altars of churches preaching. In the same way, a preacher cannot be on the platform of politics, politicking. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, the Honorable Member for, Honorable Millie Odhambo, Member for Suba, no? Those who want to contribute, put the intervention button.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I can hear members are already shouting bad girl. On this one, let me be a good girl. Madam Speaker, even though I listen and hear what my other members are saying, but I actually want to say that there are a few areas where I disagree. When the voice of the church is silent, the nation suffers. And Madam Speaker, I want to say that I agree with the church that they must speak and must call out evil. And it is indeed unfortunate that we find ourselves in a situation where members of parliament can actually be talking back and forth with the church. Did the members of parliament bring this? No. The church brought it upon themselves. And Madam Speaker, they brought it upon themselves that if you look at the last election, the church was very partisan. The church classified my party leader a demon and a devil. And they are not God, because only God knows the heart of man. You told us as the church that President Ruto was ordained by God. When did God unordain him? Or were you listening to yourselves and not to God. This is a very serious issue. The church has a place, a very special place in society. And when you cede that position to politicians, the society loses it. That is why we have femicides, things that the church should address. That is why we have rogue youth talking toxic to politicians. That is why you have people disrespecting others, because the church has decided to take politics ahead of their God-ordained duty. I want to encourage the church leaders to look at Matthew chapter 15, when the Pharisees and the teachers of the law went to confront Jesus and what they told Jesus. Because my time is up, I just want to say that if they look at what is in the book of Matthew, Jesus told them, Matthew chapter 15, they can read all of it, but Jesus told them, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. The church needs to do serious soul searching and bring the country back to its moral and rightful place. Thank you, Honorable Jeanette, for bringing this.
The Honorable Member for Seme, Honorable James Nicol.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We are talking about a very, very important issue in the country. And I thank Honorable Jeanette for bringing this. It is true, when I walk around, I don't feel proud as a member of parliament because of the things I hear. The church is calling us out. They may not themselves be right, but I think we want to take one thing. We are elected to represent the people. We carry the burden of the people. Indeed, if a society goes wrong, that same society will appoint at the people it has elected, not realizing that the people may be representing the society as it is. So when we are being called out, there may be something. And as much as we would like to call on the church, I'll end up by saying one thing and suggesting to our leadership two things. Do we have a public relations department that actually looks at the issues and points out what is it that is going on? I think we should engage that. Number two, I think the leadership in this House should actually commission a very serious study and go to the public and find out why is the public feeling as it does about us. When those facts are available, we, as representative people, as leaders, must face them squarely and address them. I don't think we are angels. And instead of bashing the church publicly, loudly like this, we should also look at ourselves. I think both sides of the society, there's a problem. We should look at ourselves, the church should look at themselves and find out. And as leaders, it is our duty to lead in this process and find out why the church is talking as it is talking about us and face those issues that we'll find out. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Sabina Chege.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank Honorable Jeanette for bringing that motion. And I concur with many things that I don't want to repeat what my colleagues have said. But Madam Speaker, I want to say something here that maybe no one has said. That this House also deserves to respect itself. Madam Speaker, we have had our own colleagues going out there, accusing us on all sorts of manner of things. And Madam Speaker, I have not seen anything happening to those members. I want to call upon the Speaker of this House, and I would have loved to speak when he was here, that it is time to crack the whip. Madam Speaker, we have had members of this House going to the same churches, and I respect the church so much. And we are all members of different churches, so we do not disrespect the religious leaders. But they have gone on the same altar. They have lied. They have said members of this have been given money. They have written, and my friend Koibori was here, and he ran away when I told him I actually want to name him here. And Madam Speaker, we have powers and privilege committee. We have not seen them cracking the whip. Madam Speaker, last Sunday, which is very unfortunate, there were people who also had gone to our village. And on the same platform, in a church forum, I heard they are not members of this house, they are our colleagues in the Senate, claiming that they were given a certain amount of money, 20 million Kenya shillings, to impeach the deputy president. Madam Speaker, why are we allowing the public to disrespect us? We are the same people who are going out there, telling lies about this house, then we complain when we are disrespected. I would urge, Madam Speaker, that members of this house, because there is a trend that they go, somebody just want to become popular, or they just want to be clapped for, so they will use this house to go and talk about things that have not happened here, and nothing happens to them. Madam Speaker, I want to say once again, it is time for the Speaker of this House to crack the whip. Let people who are lying and giving false accusation about this House be brought to book. If one of them a step is taken, Madam Speaker, I'm very sure the perception will change. Let us not go and dress ourselves out there, then we come here and cry about what the other people think about us. There's something called perception. Madam Speaker, we must clear how the outsiders, the eye of outsiders, perceive Parliament. I submit, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Alice Nganga, member for Thika Town.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. We all know when the church and the state work together, there is development. But when we start now calling each other's name, then things don't work the way they are supposed to work. I can tell you, Madam Speaker, we were in Naivasha last week, and I was quoted by the papers that there are some words that I stated when we were in Naivasha, and in all the media houses, the entire morning, it was about Alice Nganga said this, Alice Nganga talked about allowances. And I know that one is not true, but according to the people who are listening to what the papers are saying or what the media is saying, they believe whatever that was said is correct. As for what is going on to the churches, Honorable Speaker, I feel very bad, and especially when we are told not to go and give in the church. And myself, I am a believer. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. But when I am told I am not supposed to go to church and give, and Romans 6:38 says, you give and it will be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be put into your bosom. For with the same measure that you give, you use, it will be measured back to you. So me as a human being, as a church goer, as a believer in Jesus Christ, if I am told not to go and give in church, that one now means that whatever I believe in, I'm being curtailed, and that one is not fair. Let the person who wants to give to go and give. It is not all the truth all the time that the money that we give, and it is not the truth because we have been giving ever since we were young children until today. We have been giving. Now you are being told when we are mature enough that we cannot give. That is not right. And I want to say this. It is wrong when you tell the members of Parliament, we have families, we have homes, we have values, we have morals. So when we are being told that we cannot give in church, we cannot participate in church because maybe something has happened at the floor of the house. When we come here, we are doing what we are elected to do, to pass laws. Whether they favor you or you are happy with them or not, that is not in your position to tell me that I should not go to church. It is wrong to tell members of Parliament they should not visit church. It is very wrong, and let our God only be the judge, not a human being. You know, the Bible says that a caste is a person who put their trust in a man. We should all put our trust in God and God alone. Even the prophecies that are going across, they are being prophesied for members of Parliament. I should tell them, please don't believe in those prophecies. Just trust in your God. Just trust with your prayers. Keep on praying. Our God will be the judge at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
I think lastly, let me give the Honorable Member for Bamachoge Chache.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. let me also give a voice on this important debate. Personally, I'm a son of a pastor. It's so sad that churches are mixing ideas like politicians. If you cannot differentiate between a church and a politician, then this country will be doomed. Let me give you an example. It's so sad and unfortunate that you find the government may be having mistakes, which is very normal. Government is composed by human beings. In the church, we believe that clergy people are preaching what God has sent them to do. And the same Bible categorically says, you must forgive your neighbor 70 times 7 in a day. That's several times in one day. Now I'm wondering if churches are accusing, pointing fingers on politicians, pointing fingers on the president, pointing fingers to everybody, then whom are we supposed to run to? Remember, the church was meant as a solace for people having problems. It's a region whereby people should be going there for forgiveness. Churches, for example, fathers, they pray for other believers, presenting their cases to God. We cannot mix darkness and light. You cannot mix water and paraffin. They will never be mixed. That means we should differentiate categorically that we should stand as Christians and the sons of God to portray the image of God. This is the time we should let the clergy that it's high time if there is a problem facing the country, they are not supposed to point fingers to the government. They should go to the mountain and pray God to make things happen in the right way. Because if now the clergy is coming back to the nation crying and the government is crying, then what's the way forward? Let's do the right thing and know that God is not human being. You cannot charge any human. You have no right to charge another human being. All of us, we breathe one air, we breathe oxygen, given by free, given by God. This God we worship. Politicians, we do make mistakes. Politicians, we have a lot of propagandas. Politicians, we are tainted in every day, every night. You are accused of something you have never done, you never do them. But again, you find churches whereby we are supposed to go to the church, pray for forgiveness, pray that God will assist us, repent our sins. The same churches doing politics as the same politicians. So unfortunate, and I want, because of time, to say that.
The Honorable Member for Migori.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I want to talk to the media and remind them that they don't have another country called media. Their country is Kenya. And for their memory, because they should be having this in their records, 207 started as a result of recklessness. And if we continue like this, we might end up there or even worse than that. So I want to tell our media houses, we love you, we watch you, and we promote you more because our business is what you do every day. I mean, without a politician giving some speech somewhere, then media has nothing to report. And anybody who watches from Migori would rush to a particular media house because they've seen Fatuma being aired. But if you pack me matope all the time, I want to tell the media houses that one day, your children will be in this house, your mothers or fathers. In fact, ironically, I remember when I was running for this seat, I had 2 media personalities who left their job to come and compete to be women reps. I know many who have come into this house as a result of being in a media house. So if this house is that bad, then why do you focus on us? Let us build our country. Let us criticize positively. And again, I insist, do not criticize if you don't have an alternative. Give us an alternative in your criticism. I will not talk much about the churches, but I want to remind them that only Allah can judge. Both me and you, it's only Allah who knows who will be in paradise and will be in the hellfire. So I'm requesting the church I'm requesting our mosque, but I must excuse our mosque because honestly, the Muslim fraternity is not so much in politics as the other fraternity. So I'm requesting our churches, kindly pray for us. If you see Fatuma doing wrong, the best you should do for me is pray for me. But you should also call me in private and say, Fatuma, yesterday what you did was not right. That is how we were brought up. That is what we know about the churches. And that is what Jesus used to do. I never saw Jesus anywhere cast a sinner. All the time Jesus would say, you have done worse than that person. Let us pray for that person to change. So churches, this is your country, and it is through this country that you will be buried so that you go to heaven. We will not bury you in another country before you go to heaven. So please, churches, let us both be responsible. Let us pray for each other. Where we have wronged you, forgive us. Where you have wronged us, we do forgive you sincerely.
Okay, honorable members, we can now move to the next order.
Order number 12, motion. Consideration of reports on financial statements of state corporations, Nyanza region. Resumption of debate.
Honorable members, I think the chairperson of this committee had requested that we defer this particular order for later time, so we'll defer it. Next order.
Order number 13, the startup bill, Senate Bill number 14 of 2022, second reading.
I think the chairperson of the Trade Committee had requested for a few minutes. Oh, she's here. You may proceed, Honorable Mayaka. I can see that the chairperson has arrived, Honorable Marian. What's your point of order, Honorable Millie?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I don't have a problem with the starter bill. I actually really fully support it. However, I just wanted to request the House that, because this is a private member's bill, that when we have a chance to create space, that we do consider bills that are ongoing. For instance, my assisted reproductive technology bill was already in the committee of the whole House. Ideally, it's the one that should have been slotted for this time because it's equally just as important as a startup bill. So I'd request, because this Wednesday, government business took up almost all our time as private members. So when there is space, please consider my bill as a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Millie. We shall make sure the clerks let the House Business Committee know that. What's your point of order, Honorable Makalu?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the issue raised by Millie is very important, and I do agree with that. If you look at the order paper of last week, Honorable Speaker, the bill which was supposed to follow immediately was my bill, Parliamentary Amendments, Parliamentary Pensions Amendment Bill. Now, even this week, it was not in the order paper. And what makes it even very surprising, Honorable Speaker, is the fact that this bill is a bill discussing pension for these members of parliament seated here. And we don't seem to even give it any attention. I plead, Honorable Speaker, that the next opportunity for private members' bill should be given my chance. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Right, I've just been advised by the clerk that there were 3 bills for parliamentary pensions, and I think there was the House Business Committee decided that they should be looked into whether you should do 1 bill instead. But nevertheless, I think that should be, that information, the issue raised by Honorable Makalu must be raised with the House Business Committee. I think, Honorable Mayaka, you may proceed now. We are delaying your bill.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the startup bill, Senate Bill of number 14 of 2022, be read a second time. Honorable Speaker, as a co-sponsor of the bill, first of all, I'd just like to share with the members the main objectives of this particular bill. This bill is meant to provide a framework that fosters a culture of innovative thinking and entrepreneurship, registration of startups and the linkage of such startups with the financial institutions, private sector research institutions, and such other institutions as the national and county government. It also is meant to facilitate investment in and the provision of fiscal and non-fiscal supports to startups in Kenya, promote an enabling environment for the establishment, development, conduct of business and regulations of startups, establishment of incubation facilities at the national and county levels and government, and monitoring and evaluation of the legal and regulatory frameworks and the mechanism put in place to encourage the development of startups. Honorable Speaker, this particular bill is in 6 parts. Part 1, which is the preliminary and interpretation. Part 2, which covers the establishment of incubation programs and also demonstrates the role of national and county governments and establishment of the incubation programs. Part 3, which talks about registration of startups and admission into an incubation program. Part 4, Honorable Speaker, which speaks about certification of incubation, of incubators. Part 5, which speaks about the incentives for startups. And Part 6, which is the miscellaneous provisions for regulations. Honorable Speaker, just to pick this, to give this particular bill context, technology and technological innovations are set to be the biggest contributors of economic development in the next few years. And in most cases, they grow from innovative ideas and come into the market as startup businesses, which have exponential growth and potential owing to their digital nature. And Honorable Speaker, the reason for this particular, what motivated this particular bill by myself and the co-sponsor, the Senator Crystal Asige, is that it actually is meant to especially focus on the young people of this country who, because of the nature of expecting to get employed, we do not have so many opportunities. So for us, this is actually an encouragement for them to start up their own businesses and actually become employers themselves. Currently, startups provide rich entrepreneurship avenues, especially to the young people, thus empowering them to source local talent and in turn reduce unemployment. They also contribute to the growth and the collaboration between professionals with various backgrounds, the continual development of the cities and localities where they are established, and encourage creativity and ingenuity, thus contributing to the overall economic growth of our country. Honorable Speaker, reports show that 92% of Africa's investment in tech is won by just 4 countries. That is Nigeria, Egypt, South Africa, and Kenya. This is because their sizable population and larger GDPs make them attractive destinations for investments. In 2022, for example, Kenya tech startups raised over $570 million in funding. Indeed, Honorable Speaker, Kenya is recognized as the Silicon Savannah by virtue of being a host to a number of reputable startups that have advanced to become regional and global signatures. Honorable Speaker, for instance, M-Pesa, at its founding, led the world in mobile banking, mobile money innovation. Other brands, including Cellulant, Trigger Foods, M-Kopa, Hisa, among others, have since mushroomed as a result of this very innovative mobile money innovation. Despite all these successes, the country has no regulatory framework to guide and establish operations of startups. This gap has led to a number of challenges, including weaknesses in identifying startups, lack of incentivizing mechanism for their ventures, and lack of recognition of their unique functions and needs and realities. Honorable Speaker, the executive has pronounced itself as committed to being that this startup bill is enacted, recognizing that the African youth needs the digital skills, access to technology and markets that are essential if they are to thrive in an increasingly digital global economy. And Honorable Speaker, just to mention that these startups are actually not only covering the technology space, but we are also encouraging innovation on the scientific space and entrepreneurship space as well. The executive has further recognized that this is how Kenya, through her brilliant innovators, can unlock her remarkable capacity for innovation, for enterprise and even the world-class leadership. Honorable Speaker, yesterday I did speak when we were engaging on the new bill for procurement. I did mention about the fact that we have allowed our innovators from this country to be celebrated first by other people from different countries before we even recognize them back at home. And Honorable Speaker, this is just one of the ways that is going to ensure that the innovators mushrooming from our country are actually recognized and that they're actually given guidelines to be able to set up the businesses that they innovate in a proper manner. Honorable Speaker, it is useful to note that a number of countries have enacted their own legislative frameworks for startups. In a number of these countries, startups acts include an amalgamation of policies intended to increase the incentives for young people to start new ventures and encourage investors and lenders to support their budding entrepreneurs. In Tunisia and Senegal, for example, their policies are part of their broader government strategies to position their countries as innovative hubs by leveraging the emerging tech scene to improve economic development. Honorable Speaker, again, now that we have done the necessary amendments to the Public Disposable and Procurement Act, this will actually also just enable a lot of young people, a lot of local farms, a lot of innovators to be able to have opportunities, especially now that we have said that the threshold of 1 billion and below should actually be given to local farms and not foreign farms. So this is a very timely bill that is going to work hand in hand with that particular bill. Honorable Speaker, Tunisia's Startup Act provides for, among other factors, state salaries for up to 3 founders per company during the first year of operation, also generous tax breaks, startup grants, fast track of licenses for registration documents, and increased state support to cover patent licenses. Senegal's policy includes 3 tax-free years for startups, training for youth and female entrepreneurs, and a startup registration platform easily accessible on a government website. And here in Kenya, we are also proposing for tax holidays for the same. And you will recall, Honorable Speaker, that one of the pledges in the Azimio manifesto that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga had really advocated for was that the young people who have startups should actually be given tax holidays for them to be able to catch up and be able to integrate themselves into the business space. In India, in 2016, the government launched the Startup Action Plan, which was dubbed the Startup Indian Initiative. Its objective was to address aspects of the startup ecosystem and as a support framework for innovative entrepreneurs. India's motivation behind the action plan was to fast-track the spread of the startup movement from the digital technology sector to other sectors, including social manufacturing, agriculture, education, and healthcare. Further, they targeted to move the concentration from Tier 1 cities like Mumbai and into Tier 2 and 3, considered as semi- and urban areas. Honorable Speaker, I'm demonstrating some of these examples so that we can be able to see that as a country, that this is something that has actually been implemented elsewhere, and it's something that can actually really work in our country because we do have the resource and the potential to do the same. Honorable Speaker, based on the foregoing, the necessity and urgency for enacting this startup bill cannot be gainsaid. This bill, once enacted, will provide a framework to encourage growth and sustainable tech development, new entrepreneurship, employment, create a more favorable environment for innovation, attract Kenyan talents to diverse capital avenues, and also, Honorable Speaker, to encourage young people to start becoming CEOs and not depend on looking for employment, because they can actually gain much more when they are the innovators and the owners of their own businesses and startups. The bill provides for registrations of startups, a register of startups, and even admission into incubation programs. Further, it outlines obligations of incubators, support to startups, including credit guarantee schemes, training and capacity building, application for grants, and revocation of patents, fiscal incentives, growth objectives, and obligations for various entities. The framework provided by the startup bill will enable startups to grow, to thrive, and encourage innovation, encourage investment, and government support for the startup. It seeks to encourage the culture that we have as a country of innovation and entrepreneurship, to simplify registration and licensing, to formalize recognition what a startup is, and create a special virtual economic zone where, despite their geographical location, they can use technology to leverage and be recognized as one ecosystem. Honorable Speaker, just to put this into perspective, for example, in South Africa, you'll find that young people have digi-economical applications whereby they're able to link up the farmers to the market centers through digital economy. And the reason why they sought to do this is because they realized that young people do not like farming. Agriculture is not their thing. But when they got introduced to the digital aspect of it and how they can introduce digital economy into their country, then this sparked their interest in that particular space. So, Honorable Speaker, this again could be a very exciting innovation in the agricultural space for our young people, because as we know, we do have counties that are agriculture-based, and this would really benefit the young people from there. To create and give incentives such as tax holidays that I spoke about on duty and VAT, and to attract angel investors whose investments are recognized and de-risked to a certain degree, in case the startup doesn't take off in a certain period. What do we mean by angel investors, Honorable Speaker? These are people who actually believe or buy an idea that a young innovator has, and they would really like to invest in it, but they do not have the right framework to be able to do this. So this particular bill is going to enable angel investors and people who really believe in the dreams of young people to be able to invest in them. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Article 96 of the Constitution, the Senate, where this bill was initiated from, is tasked with the role of protecting the interest of counties. And you'll note that in this particular bill, it also quite outlines the role of both national and county governments in their role, especially in registrations of startups. Therefore, the bill clearly articulates the role of county government, facilitates startups and incubation programs. Although obtaining support of the national government is critical, efforts must be concentrated at grassroots level, in which case the role of county governments in supporting startups become prominent. Honorable Speaker, today we've just had the President celebrating 1 year of eCitizen. And one of the roles that eCitizens has really assisted people back in the counties is that they're able to actually register businesses. So this is going to work in line with that and just make the process even more seamless for the young people who do not necessarily have to come all the way to Nairobi, to Kisumu City, Mombasa City, Eldoret City, to be able to register startups, but they can actually do this at their own county level. Honorable Speaker, the bill thus provides the County Executive Committee members shall do the following: put in place a national and county incubation policy framework for the development of business and incubation sector startup systems, enter into partnership with local and international business incubators in order to promote the establishment and growth of startups in Kenya, establish programs for the certification and admission of incubators into the incubation program, put in place mechanisms that promote the development of business incubation programs, and create an enabling environment for promotion of business incubators, including fiscal and non-fiscal incentives. Honorable Speaker, startups require significant investment at the initial stage, especially in terms of capital, investment, and research and development. Considering that most people in these ecosystems are youth, there is need to support them and provide incentives, from conceptualizing of their projects to a place where businesses are established, healthy, and running. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, this bill confers on the Cabinet Secretary, without prejudice, the power to make regulations on the exemption of startups from 1, registration fees, protection of intellectual property rights, employment benefits and compensation, relationships between founders and employees, reporting and accountability of startups, and this will go a long way in giving our entrepreneurs the impetus that they need to establish themselves. The bill further amends the Science and Technology Act of 2013 to provide for financial support of technological innovation, representation of startups in the National Research Fund, and allocation of monies to provide for financial support to technological innovation. Honorable Speaker, the bill goes further to set out a criteria for admission into the incubation program, registration of startups and obligations of startups. This is important to avoid abuse of the system by fraudulent persons trying to circumvent the statutory obligations such as tax and levies. This bill also confers the responsibility of registration and database maintenance on the Kenya National Innovation Agency. This agency, as a state corporation that was established under the Science, Technology and Innovation Act of 2013, is responsible for coordination, promotion, and regulation of national innovation system. The agency works with stakeholders to promote innovation and enterprise development out of research and ideas, which means supporting the identification, recording, and protection of innovation ideas. Honorable Speaker, just again to give this into context, we all know the story of the Kyondo, which we, as a country, we really, it really took us time to fight back the rights of the naming rights from Japan, because they had named it and done a copyright of Kyondo before we did it in Kenya. And we really struggled to do that. So this is going to enable and ensure that anybody who comes up with an innovative idea, whether in soft or a service or a good, that they will actually be able to have copyrights for their ideas. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, allow me to reiterate that the implementation of this act still confers on the National Assembly and Senate other responsibilities over and above oversight of its implementation. This includes ensuring that both national and counties are adequately funded so as to be able to undertake their responsibility. It is incumbent upon us to pursue for increased allocation to counties as well, so that they can be able to establish incubation programs and auxiliary system services, increase investment in research and development activities undertaken by startups, establish programs for the certification and admission of the incubators through the, for instance, in polytechnics. Honorable Speaker, startups are the vehicles through which innovation spur economic growth. Therefore, we must support the entrepreneurs, promote innovation by creating a favorable environment, anchored on a comprehensive legislative framework. And Honorable Speaker, I just want to urge the honorable members of this House to please support us in this particular bill, so that we can leave a legacy for the young people of Kenya, that we are enabling them to be able to gain from the innovations that they do have. Honorable Speaker, with that, I do move. I thank you. And I call upon the Honorable Marianne Kaitani to...
Thank you, Honorable Madam Speaker. As I stand to second, from the onset, we want to thank the private member at the Senate and Honorable Irene Mayaka, who is the co-sponsor of this bill at the National Assembly, for bringing up the startup bill. And I must say that this bill has already gone through Senate, and it is now before the Departmental Committee of Trade, Industry, and Cooperatives. It's a private member's bill, and government is also very interested in this bill. And I would like to say that the Ministry of Cooperatives and MSMEs, more specifically the State Department of MSMEs, is also very keen on this startup bill, because the young people who are I may say the cornerstone of this country in terms of development are left out, especially when it comes to investments and developments. And the reason, Madam Speaker, is because when they go out to start a business, either that business, if it is a beautiful idea, is snatched away from them, or they never get any support at all to be able to grow that idea to a business that can be able to run and work very well. A case in point, and a very good example, Madam Speaker, is the famous and the product we use today called the M-Pesa system. The M-Pesa system was an initiative and an innovation of a young man in this country. And before the young man knew it all, that product had already been taken over by an international company called Vodacom. And before we knew it, it was now a big product that is now being run and managed by Safaricom. The young man who was the inventor of that particular product, if at all, never got any reward for the works that he did. The product that the president launched, the product that the president was talking about today, the celebration of 1 year in service, that is eCitizen, is a Kenyan product. It's an own Kenyan product. And this particular entity that runs eCitizen, or the group that runs eCitizen, are a creation of young people who have thought and used technology to make life easy for us as Kenyans to be able to pay for services that we use to the Kenyan government in an easy and comfortable way. You can actually sit at the comfort of your home and be able to transact with government 24/7. Unlike before, where you used to wait until government offices open between 8 and 5, and by the time you get to a government office, perhaps the officer in charge has hung his coat and gone about his business, and he leaves you there waiting for hours on end, not knowing what time he will turn up to be able to serve you. And you can see that that service has come in handy and is today helping the Kenyan people and the public. So the startup bill that we are looking at here is a bill that, much as it came from Senate and is a private member's bill, government has a lot of interest, and government wants and intends to make amendments to it. And therefore, much as we will support with amendments that will come from government and stakeholders as well, so that everybody comes in and gives input into the startup bill. A few of the objects of the startup bill, as recognized by government, is the recognition of startups. Who is a startup? And is a startup the company that has just started now? Or it could even be a going concern, but they have never been able to grow from where they started. That, again, will be considered as a startup. And in considering these startups, we'll also be considering what we call incubation and how we can incubate or be able to nurture these companies that are startups so that they grow and become real industries that can employ a lot of our youth. Again, we will look at what we call accelerators and technology transfers. A lot of these startups today, Madam Speaker, are actually in the ICT or the technology sector. That is where most of them are. That is not to say that we don't have startups in other areas like Juakali. We know, for example, right now that we are doing affordable housing and our markets, and many people are coming up with innovative ideas of what they call a smart market, or rather equipment that is put in the already constructed market that will make life easy for the traders or the mamambogas who are going to trade in the markets. And all that is innovation from our young people who, if not taken care of, someone may decide to take up their innovation, and because they are big, they now muscle their way out and take the businesses and the ideas from these young people, leaving them with nothing to be able to hold on to, and nobody to also be able to support for them. So basically, the objects of the bill will be to recognize these startups, establish, develop, and support growth of these startups so that there is a growth plan that is there from when this business is being incubated to when it starts, all the way to when it is now mature and ready to fly and able to start work and be able to compete with the rest in industry. It will also facilitate the provision of fiscal and non-fiscal support. That is an area that most of these startups really look up to, especially for government to give them support in the fiscal and non-fiscal areas. We have government has a lot of funding and funding facilities that are available, but these startups are never able to get there. Example of people like Kenya Industrial Estates, Kenya Development Corporation, and many other agencies that have monies, government monies. But these startups are not able to access these funds at affordable rates, because when you go to KIE, they still require you to put in put in collateral, and many of these startups and many of these young people don't even have collateral. The only thing they have is the phone they have, that is where they are doing their technological innovations, or just the brain that they have, and that cannot be collateral in the name that can be used by these entities. So these startups will be supported for such kind of support. It will also help in catalyzing the growth of Kenya's startups, because we find that many industries, many companies, many parts of the world, like in China, Vietnam, many startups have actually grown to become big businesses. We know countries that have actually grown, like Singapore. They grew from small startups, today they are big companies, and because they were able to support young business entrepreneurs to grow their businesses. Even the product we know of today, Samsung, which is the phones we have, we know of Apple. If you listen to their stories, Microsoft, you listen to their stories. They all started up from a bedroom in a university as a startup. And because of the support and environment that was provided to them, they were able to grow to today being the blue chip companies that we know about. The bill also will help in getting private sector to come in and help in such startups. And in that process, these same private sectors who are coming in to help startups will also give the startups, they will also get incentives. They will be incentivized to be able to create or to be able to give businesses to support the startups. An example I have seen in one of the medias in the US before is something called Shark Tank. I think many of us have watched Shark Tank, and you see how entrepreneurs or business investors come in to listen to ideas of young people, and when they like the idea, they pick it up, and when they pick it up, they now get incentives for supporting those young people, because everybody always requires, especially in a startup, you require someone to hold your hand until you are strong enough to be able to walk alone. So some of the other issues is linkages of these startups to financial institutions. If we go to our banks today, many banks will ask you for so many issues, so many documents. They tell you bring 5 years bank statements, or how many years of documents. They ask you for so many things, which these young and startup companies may not have. So the government, when this bill is passed, then the government will create an environment where such financial institutions can now be able to waive some of those requirements that are required of normal working businesses, and allow that these startups are able to create or are able to access financial capital that they so require for them to be able to grow their businesses. Another thing that is going to come out of these startups is the labeling, incubation and acceleration of these startups. We need to have an eligibility criteria. What will be there that will identify that you can actually become a startup? What are the grants that can be given to in these incubators? And how do we register these startups? Who will be the registrar? We need to have a register of all the startups that are in the country, and the support and the coordination and the technology transfers that will be required for these people to be able to access the government services. The other major, and I think very salient feature in this startup bill is that the support that government will give to these startups, more specifically on issues like tax reliefs, on issues like VAT and income tax refunds or reliefs on such kind of taxes, so that these startups are not already feeling the pain of paying taxes, but more of relief. Because today, many young people don't want to get formalized. Why? Is because the moment they get formalized, the next day they find a taxman at the door telling them, now pay income tax, pay VAT, you have not touched this. But if these entities, these young startups get such kind of reliefs, they'll be comfortable to be able to run their businesses knowing that I have a relief for a certain period of time. We know government is giving reliefs to investors who come into this country, who are going to our EPZs and SEZs. And these kind of reliefs and those kind of comforts that those investors are coming in could also be transferred to these young startups. And this bill is creating that room and that leverage for these young entrepreneurs to be able to do or to start their businesses where they get reliefs from government. Some are even just levies and levies that come from certain taxes. They could even be relieved maybe from even a levy from maybe the county council levy and all those kind of levies. So there is a lot of stuff that is going to come from the startup bill, and there are some miscellaneous provisions that are also being provided in this bill, like data protection and patenting. Many of these young people don't even know the process of how to get their products to be patented and data protection. And therefore, with the government support, they will be able to get their products or their services patented and their data protected. And this could not come any sooner than it has right now. We are aware that the government of Kenya and the president himself has decided to have incubation centers for startups and for young people in his office. We heard him state that yesterday. And I think it is a good way forward, and it's a very good incentive and a good show for this country that he, the president, leading from the top, is really keen on making sure that these startups and these businesses and the young people get a space in this country to be able to run their businesses, start their businesses, run them, and become prosperous and grow to become big multinationals and be able to compete in the world like any other multinationals. So I stand to support, and we will be ready to work with the members, the private members who brought up this bill, of course with amendments that we will get from the public and the government. Thank you, I support.
You second? You can go, please go on record.
Sorry, I forgot. I stand to second this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. I now propose the question, which is that the startup bill, Senate Bill number 14 of 2022, be now read a second time. The Honorable Millie Odhiambo.
No, you still have right to speak.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just wish to inform the members that we are just starting, so you still have time to speak. Madam Speaker, I want to congratulate Honorable Crystal Asige and Honorable Rene Mayaka for co-sponsoring this important bill. Madam Speaker, in their sponsoring this bill, it is a testament of the fact that disability is not inability. Crystal Asige, within the short time that she's been in the Senate, has brought up very, very good pieces of legislation, and I want to congratulate her. And I want to also congratulate Honorable Irene Mayaka, aka Rene, who has also brought, this is actually her second bill, she brought another one, an environmental one.
Honorable Millie Odhiambo.
Yes.
I also wanted to inform your colleagues seated next to you that when it comes to order of precedence, you speak first. So you proceed, but now they have also learned something that you must speak before they do, especially when you have requested.
Madam Speaker, I'm glad that you've set the record straight. I know the ones that are coming for the first time sometimes are a bit resentful when we consider ranking, but they will appreciate it when they will come for their second term, because I can see people here coming back for their second terms. So when they do come for the second term, you will appreciate when a new member is given priority over you. There's something that goes with ranking. Even in the legal profession, it's there. And that's why you always hear the substantive speaker sometimes putting us in our places when we purport to know too much and they say, I'm your senior legally. Everybody knows that. Madam Speaker, I also want to say that this is testament of the fact that being nominated is actually not bad. Honorable Mayaka and Crystal Asige are nominated members, and they are doing this excellent work. And Madam Speaker, even I started as a nominated member, here serving my 4th term. Cecily Mbarire started as a nominated member, is now a governor. So there's really nothing wrong with a person being nominated. And even Honorable John Mbadi served this term, actually not last term, as a nominated member. Now he's a cabinet secretary. But I don't know why people have this perception that they were talking about nomination that is just about women. But I want to congratulate them that they have understood their purpose as nominated members, and they are doing very well. Madam Speaker, I want to say that this bill also talks of something that is very close to my heart, which is entrepreneurship and innovation, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm the founder of the Maiden Institute of Leadership, Law, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship, which is the Milley Institute. And under the Milley Institute, it has divisions. And one of the divisions is innovation, and the other division is entrepreneurship, Madam Speaker. And the reason that I founded this was because I know innovation and entrepreneurship is the future of this nation. Madam Speaker, because of lack of formal government jobs and because of the challenges that we are facing as a country, the young people can rely on this area powered by technology, not only to create jobs for themselves, but to create jobs for others. So when you provide a framework like this, it is actually good for our young people. Madam Speaker, due to an existing legal framework, or lack of an existing legal framework, you can see that our bright Kenyans are misusing their brains. Only this week, you have seen that some Kenyans hacked systems and were part of a group that stole I don't know how many billions of shillings. Can you imagine if the brains used to steal billions were used to create jobs? But because we lack that framework, where they have tax holidays and other incentives, then the only other options they think they have is to steal. But that is why we need to create this framework to enable them use their thoughts well. Madam Speaker, I will bring an amendment to give awards to the people with innovative ideas that offer solutions in society. For instance, Madam Speaker, I think it was in the last parliament when I attended the World Bank, the annual World Bank meeting in DC. And if there was one thing that has been over-celebrated, it is M-Pesa. And Kenya is always celebrated, not only M-Pesa, but other technologies. I was talking recently to a group that I was training online, and it's a group of Kenyans. And because we currently feel that the country is facing so many challenges, sometimes we speak like we are in a dungeon. Yes, we are facing a lot of challenges as a country, and we must acknowledge that. But there are also very good things that are coming out of this country. And one of those things that is coming out of this country, or has come out of this country, is M-Pesa. But Madam Speaker, I would want to encourage Safaricom that I know for legal purposes, they may not wish us to know who that innovator is, because then they don't want that person challenging, because I know the person was supposed to have actually gone to court, I think, to sue M-Pesa. But I would want to encourage them really from a moral perspective. Let us know who that person is. Let us celebrate him as a country, because he has actually created something unique, not for Kenya, but to the whole world, that everybody is replicating in the whole world. But because we don't celebrate our own when they do such good things, that's why you see them using it for wrong purposes. I would, by the same stroke, actually request that Parliament considers forwarding the names of the movers of this bill for an award, a presidential award, because they've done an excellent job. I would want to request that we consider Irene Mayaka and Crystal Asige for presidential award for this excellent work. Madam Speaker, I also just want to say that the other challenge that I had concerns with, but I've noticed is in the bill, is the issue of intellectual property rights. That a lot of our young people come up with very good ideas, but because they don't have the resources, they go to people with that knowledge or with the resources. And the people they go to steal. So if we have intellectual property rights, a strong intellectual property rights framework, it will cover them. And that's why the bill is seeking an amendment to the Science and Technology Act to ensure that that is done. One of the things that I would want the bill to we like taking advantage of good things that you'll discover. Maybe we've said, I don't know how much you are saying a startup is worth. Maybe it's up to something up to 2 million annually or 5 million annually. Honorable Mayaka will inform me. But in Kenya, you may move to maybe if it's 2 million and you move to 1 billion, but you will still find somebody considering themselves a startup. Mr. Speaker, it is the same challenge that I've seen that we are dealing with on issues that normally require affirmative action and marginalization that requires affirmative action. There are areas and certain categories where there has been intervention and no longer qualify to be considered as marginalized area. But because at the beginning they were marginalized, we keep calling them marginalized. Marginalization is not inherent by DNA. It is because of human activity. There are areas, like I know the speakers, your home area was marginalized for a long time. I know the area where I come from was marginalized for a long time because of political reasons. But Mr. Speaker, if there is intervention in some of those areas and there is a change, we can't say we are marginalized for life. There must be a criteria to show that this has stopped being marginalized and now it is, like at par with the rest of the country. The same way with affirmative action, even for women in this house. Many of us pushed for a sunset clause so that you don't have affirmative action for life. We are hoping that there will come a time that people will have normalized the election of women. I will give you an example that when I first came into this parliament, and we came in nominated with people like Honorable Sophia Abdi Nur, Honorable Amina Abdallah, and others, Shebesh, Honorable Rachel Shebesh. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that people don't talk too much about is the fact that in those areas we come from, no woman has ever been elected. Mr. Speaker, I am the second Suba woman in the Kenya National Assembly. The first one was Josephine Sinyo, who was nominated. And I also came in nominated. This is the first time a Suba woman has been elected to this house. Honorable Sophia Abdi Nur, I'm told in 1997, she vied, and she actually succeeded on the ground. But a delegation was sent to President Moi, and he was told you cannot elect a woman. And a certificate was cancelled. But after her nomination, she was then elected. And I can tell you everywhere, the Maasais, Lamu, all the areas that would not really nominate women before can now elect women. Why? Because there's affirmative action. We have not yet reached the percentage we need. But once we reach that percentage, then affirmative action must be out of the books. And in a similar manner, Mr. Speaker, there must be a sunset clause for a startup. Otherwise, we'll abuse it. Once again, congratulations to the two of you for an excellent bill.
What was the affirmative action you got in your elections yourself? I mean, other than the time when you got nominated, where many men do get nominated, but did you get any undue advantage over your male compatriots for the 2 times you came in as elected member? You competed there equally with everybody else.
When I was elected?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you when I was elected, I competed equally, no, I wouldn't want to say equally, but I competed with other male members. And what I went through, when I finished my first election, I was shocked. I was like, was I in a war or was I in an election? And when I finished, I wrote for 2 weeks. And that is a book, Rig or Be Rigged, because I was shocked. And I've removed half of the things that I saw from that book for political convenience. It is not easy for women to be elected.
Okay, fair enough. The Honorable who is next to, Jalas. For the benefit of Honorable Millie, when you first came in as a nominated member of parliament, I remember there were 6 Kalenjin women who competed with men and won their elections. Sambili, not only from one community, only from one community. And here is Mary Ann, who literally competes with all the men. So the affirmative action in the definition, anyway, I'm on the chair, I cannot debate. Let's continue.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And just first to appreciate Madam Millie Mabona, and recognize that she's my senior, and I was raising my hands up to speak before her, not recognize that she's a ranking member. My apologies. And Mr. Speaker, I hope to come back here also to feel the same when maybe a first-timer has been given a chance to speak before, before a ranking member. And with her sitting next to me, I should have been quiet throughout until she speaks. And with that, let me just get straight to it to appreciate Asige, our Senator, Honorable Senator Asige, and Honorable Millie Mayaka on this bill, on the startups bill. Irene Mayaka on this startup bill. Mr. Speaker, I am a member of parliament elected in Nairobi, where so many young men and women now believe in what they can do themselves, what they call a startup. There's an influx of startups, every single young man and woman hoping that their dreams can come true with the simple things that they are able to do with their hands or their creativity and all. And I just want to give a few examples. I want to give an example of a fashion designer who's taken over the fashion industry just as a startup and now ruling the industry. Yvonne Afro Street is a big startup. Home 254 is a big startup. Artfit is a big startup. And even on the ICT level and communication, Nairobi Gossip, or what they call as Gen Z's NGC, is a big startup that now runs the media and information in this city. So if these young people were never given a chance to show up what they can do, their startups would have just died. But then again, today, young people believe more in themselves because of one thing. When they complete their studies, one of the first things somebody's asked for is 10 or 20 years experience. Where are they going to get this 10 years experience if they've just left the universities or the colleges where they were from? That is why we have so many influx of startups, and they need to be protected. And with that, just to pick from the bill itself, the startups themselves must also be given tax holidays. These are just young people trying to figure out what next for myself, what next for this big idea that I have. Any young man trying something for themselves should register their companies for free, start for free, and even be given a tax holiday so that they are able to start up whatever the idea there is. Most of these billionaires we see today started up as startups. See Elon Musk, one of the, almost number one, the most richest man in the world, started up as a startup. Look at Bill Gates from a bedroom and friends, college friends. Look at the Facebook founder, Zuckerberg. Also just started with a few friends, and it was just an idea and just as a startup. So we kindly ask that these young people having these great ideas be given tax holidays, be given a chance to register their companies for free so that they can try these amazing ideas that they have. But also requesting blue chip companies to open doors for these startups, because so many of young people go out there to show their ideas, what they have, only to come back and say that my idea was stolen. Then, boom, the idea is the number one thing in the market. We have so many young people who are crying out here, looking for legal redress, just to show that they had an idea, Mr. Speaker, that was stolen by a blue chip. If you are a blue chip company out there and you see a young man walk into your company with an idea, you have no business stealing this idea. Hold this young man or this young lady's hand so that they can be able to express themselves. I'm here to support Senator Sige and Honorable Irene Mayaka on this startup bill, and we will be here to support and see that it comes to fruitful. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Is the MP for Igembe North around? No. Yeah, we will then go to Carole Mondi. Let's have the Subas, basically. It's a Suba day.
The Suba fraternity. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to recognize the good work of Honorable Senator Asige and our very fine young lady, Honorable Renee Irene Mayaka. She's doing very good work. She's a prominent member of the House, always present and innovative. I'm very pleased to support this particular bill, the startup bill. It is so timely that I was a little surprised because just a few days ago, I did appear before the Finance Committee to propose a change in our curriculum to include a new subject called nationhood science, which part of which is to actualize Article 10 of our Constitution, but also to bring in innovation, entrepreneurship, and responsible citizenship as a mandatory subject in our schools. I think once we have that, it will be actualized in this bill. Once we have innovation and entrepreneurship as standard subjects in school. I think we have tried as a country for so long to incubate startups. We had Kenya Industrial Estates, we had Kenya Institute of Research and Development, we had Numerical Machining Complex, and there are things they have done, they have achieved, but there's still a lot of gaps to be filled. When I looked at this bill, I see a very good starting point, and I'm very confident with public participation and the input of members of this House, we will enrich this bill. There are a few areas that probably we just need to talk about from the onset. For example, the definition of startup, I think, appears to be a little too limited and restricted to technology-based innovation entities, though it uses the word includes. But as you have heard Honorable Jalango Langata One saying, they are fashion startups, they are news media startups. You can call that technology, but there are so many other startups. So I think we probably will have to look at that and see how to expand it so that many of our young people can get the opportunity to enjoy support under this bill when it becomes an act. Also, if you look at the proposed section 8, the eligible startups, the forms of registration are a bit restrictive. Actually, what startups require are flexible, affordable, quick, non-cumbersome business registration systems. Not the formal ones, not like a private limited liability company or a partnership. Those may cost you $200,000-300,000 to register, and many people may not even have that money. So I think they need a special category of registration, and we will have to do some work on that and figure out how to improve on that. And also, if you look at the requirements that to qualify, one must have 90% of its shares owned by one or more citizens of Kenya, and at least 15% of the entity's expenses attributed to research and development. If you check the experience of Silicon Valley, most of the startups are actually collaborative. They are not restricted by national boundaries. An Indian guy goes into Silicon Valley, meets an American, or sometimes just an Indian guy in Silicon Valley. In fact, that is why you'll find taxis, waiters who don't even speak English, because majority of the innovators are there from Southeast Asia. And so we probably don't need to put such restrictions. And to attract international startups and international capital, and to make it a really collaborative process, we need to have very extensive flexibilities on ownership as well as on regulation. Honorable Speaker, there are other very good items I've seen here, but which probably we will need to improve on. For example, on Part 5, which is the heart of the matter, incentives for startups. I've read quickly what the proposed sections say, and if you look at the incentives, they reminded me of a miniskirt. A miniskirt is something that is long enough to cover the substance or the subject matter, but short enough to arouse interest. What I'm trying to say is that the incentives are not very expansive. I think they're a bit too restricted, and it may be useful to get a flavor of what startups really need. And in my view, one of the clearest things as I've said, is clear licensing and regulatory frameworks. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to advise two internet companies that first came here, Africa Online and NairobiNet. There was no registration process. I advised them, start the business, the law will follow you. African Online followed, and they became very successful. NairobiNet waited for the law to come into place, and they never caught up with African Online. I think startups also need access to non-recourse funding, more so equity, in form of equity, as opposed to loans. So we need to strengthen Article 27 so that part of the incentive frameworks are how do we engineer this equity access for these startups. And many of the members have talked about intellectual property rights. It is a well-known fact that the startup companies probably do not even have the legal knowledge as to how to maneuver on protecting their intellectual property rights. But it has also been observed by economists that you can tell the future of a country by just going to the register of their intellectual property. The more they have and the more are registered annually, the more progressive that country is. So I think we need to strengthen those provisions, as well as give guarantees of access to contracts, government contracts, especially for startups. We already have the 30% for youth and women, but I think we need to have another category for startups. For example, most of the Korean companies you see actually were chaebols supported by government, both in terms of funding and in terms of contracts. Legal support. This bill needs to figure out how to extend legal support to startups for purposes of negotiating good contracts, but also ensuring compliance with various laws. Business development support. This bill, I think, needs to be expanded to include housing, like Kirdi. Where do you incubate? Where do you, somebody will have an idea. You don't want him to be in a garage. He needs an office where he can access internet, have meetings, collaborate. So I think we need to do that. And most importantly, business development support in terms of what Honorable Millie said, transition from informal to formal. And as I said, apart from non-recourse funding in terms of equity, startups also need access to capital markets. If you go to the developed capital markets, there are always special segments for startups. So I think we need to figure out how to include that also in this bill. And of course, linkages with established firms for support and coaching. And finally, we need to create a broader, not just national, but multilateral financing framework to support startups. You know, we have very many agencies that offer credit insurance, credit support, like African Trade Insurance Agency. And I think we need to also include that, so that if we can combine easy registration, good legal advice, affordable financing, and access to government markets, I think we will have a very robust startup environment for our young. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support.
Honorable Dr. Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for
Followed
giving...
by Madam Omenyo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And let me start by appreciating the Honorable Senator and the Honorable Member who has brought up this. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this bill because this bill addresses probably one of our biggest challenges, which is youth unemployment. And this is a challenge that sometimes we see as a threat, but in my mind is actually the greatest potential we have. Nothing can be bigger than human capital if properly utilized. And the people who are affected are mainly the youth who have the time and the energy to actually increase production and promote development in the country. Mr. Speaker, if you see how youth really struggle after the education, then you realize that the population growth in our country has not been matched with the job creation. And the education system, Mr. Speaker, has been in such a way that it has created more potential employees instead of creating potential employers. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, there's need in this country to encourage innovation in the way of business. And that is exactly what this bill does, in my view. You need to encourage people to create structures for them, to support registration for them, and all the legal systems they require. Therefore, this bill provides a lot of that. I'm happy that it actually provides for the establishment of an incubation program, and therefore actually challenging this bill itself by creating the framework which actually calls upon national governments and county governments to get these incubation programs. Once government institutions are actually put in place and programs are put in place, quite often you find that then people follow up and things are done. And I think our youth need this. These programs will also give networks, and I think our people need a lot of network, particularly international network and even local network. There may be, and there are, young people who have many ideas, very novel ideas, but they're unable actually to implement this unless they're supported with networks that can help them get along what they want. There are even ideas that young people will have, but they lack the systems and even the material support to research further. So they have the ideas, they carry the ideas, innovative ideas, but they do not know how to do research on how they can apply these ideas. And this bill does that by establishing the program. They also created the agency which will actually guide in the development of standards and guidelines which will enable interaction internationally and both nationally, and even competition. Even if they have innovative ideas, even if they have very bankable and very practical ideas, without support, they may not be able to compete internationally. I know of a young man who had something that they really wanted to show up and was invited abroad to actually go and demonstrate, and they couldn't. I was looking around if they can get support. I think these programs, if put in place, will support such people. This bill, Mr. Speaker, also creates a database, and I think if we can have a database which will accept anybody, any idea of startup that you have, however crude, it can actually be registered. And then that means now you can help them, pick who needs business support, support them on how to develop even ownership structures, and support them on how they can seek investments. You need a database so that you can look at all that. And that database will also help in actually coordinating the efforts of various entities, government entities, non-government entities, that will help people who are in startup, people who are innovative. And Mr. Speaker, the legal support they'll also need. People will know what they want to do. They may even have some resources to do it. They may just lack the skill to navigate all the requirements of registration, all the requirements of the processes and the licenses and so on. I think that is something that if you have a registration system, you can follow up and help them with that. In Clause 9, it sets up the criteria for qualifying as a startup, which I don't think should be strict. When people have ideas, they should be encouraged more than insisting you do this, you do this, you do this. So I think those are areas we can look up. And it actually brings a certification process. Once you've done something that is actually can be applied, can be funded, can get into place, then you actually need some form of certification. It then gives you status. And once you have status, you can get support from all over the places. And they also will need support on even human resource management. People can have ideas, people can even have startups, but then they'll fail in areas just such as human resource support, or even just auditing their businesses. So I think this is a novel idea. In Clause 27, they talk of incentives, but as Honorable Member said, I think they're limited. But intellectual property right is very, very important. If people have innovative ideas, particularly if they're technological, and we do not go in, we do not go in to support them so that they get intellectual protection on this will actually be lost. And, you know, sometimes even the idea itself, it doesn't have to actually be turned into a business. The idea itself, people can have enough royalties to actually earn a living and even do other businesses. So fiscal support, financial support, I think is the biggest. When young people come, they always say, oh, we have this idea, but we do not have the capital. In fact, to the extent that very many of them believe that you need to get capital first before you even think of what to do. I always tell them, think of what to do, and then you can look for capital. And when you have a bill like this, if it stands into an act, then of course the young men will know where to run to. Even when they actually develop and start and grow, the biggest thing in actually making companies go bigger is research and development. And I can see this bill proposes under the incentives they can do that. That means, Mr. Speaker, in general, this is a very, very important bill for our country, and therefore I support. We'll probably see how to improve it through some amendments that can be brought in. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I don't see the Honorable Omenya. I probably have to go to the Honorable. Where are you?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ship this startup bill right from my heart and congratulate my colleagues, Senator Asige and Honorable Irene Mayaka. Very many young people, as I speak now, are in the graves with their know-how, with their skills, with the creativity they had. But because no one held their hand, nobody had even trusted that they can do anything. They were frustrated, sent into depression, others committed suicide, others went into drinking, and it maybe resulted into death. So this startup bill must be supported by the government, because when the government is involved, they will be provided fund, capital, to do their thing, and they will be protected by the government. No one will steal their idea and run with it and make money, and they stay there as if they didn't have anything to do. Also, if the government is involved fully, it will create a favorable environment, networking, marketing for them. Some of the youths have never gone beyond Nairobi, maybe not even Nairobi, their villages. So once these people are known, they are invited, they are supported, they are pushed, they are taken even beyond their comfort zones in the villages to showcase what they have. It will now, motivate more people to come up with more ideas to support themselves and support the communities and beyond where they even thought. So what I'm asking for is also they should be exempted from being taxed for some time until they are stable. Nowadays, immediately you have registered a small thing, KRA people are all over, city council, they are visiting your shops, permit, so many things are asked to the level if anybody who had no money to start anything, the way sometimes the KRA officials behave, it can just discourage. These youths try even coming up with crowdfunding, try to raise funds, what we call harambes, but they can't. But if the government is involved, I know they'll get this capital and do their thing. See what the GNZs were doing the other day. If they were supported and have hope that the government will hold their hands, then they would not have done what they were doing just recently. In fact, this startup bill, my colleagues, Senator Asige and Honorable Irene Mayaka, they have thought for 4 generations to come, because the things that we were hoping and wishing and wanting to do, but we are not doing because we give up and say, who will support? Who is there? Who's listening? Now it is here on the table. And if the president is listening wherever he is, now that it is in parliament, this bill must pass, because we needed it like yesterday. We also want it because it will promote more entrepreneurs. This idea of people, like when I was young, I was told if I go to school, I'll get a job. Where are the jobs today? This startup bill will help people, even if they went to school and didn't reach some level. Creativity in them will make them have a living, and a good one, some standards in their livelihood, because they will be making money for themselves and they will be employing others, so that we reduce the baggage that the government has for jobs, and that will also reduce insecurity and will bring in food security as well, and many other things, like making sure that we decongest also cities, because everybody's coming to look for jobs in the cities. But if they can sit in their villages, maybe with a computer donated by the government, their creativity online is also protected, and they are getting their monies right there. No one will be thinking to come and congest a city looking for a job. So this is an idea that should be healed by both hands and legs and everything by this government. So thank you, the two who have come up with it. I support fully, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Elachi Beatrice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me also first to thank Senator Crystal Asige and Honorable Irene Mayaka. Mr. Speaker, this bill actualizes what the Right Honorable Prime Minister wished when he was campaigning, what the youth can really benefit and how we can support young people to start creating jobs through innovation. And he knew very well, without having a framework of startups and incubators to be given incentives by government for them to survive, then it will be very difficult. So I want to congratulate them and to really thank them for now bringing the framework, and I'm hoping as we finalize and pass this bill, it will be able indeed to support government in all the initiatives also government has been wishing on how to support young people. Mr. Speaker, the role of the national government in this bill is to develop standards and guidelines to regulate the relationship between an incubator and a startup person. And this will really support young people, because they get confused in the two. And also government also gets confused in terms of the mechanism on how do you manage a young person who has started business. He is trying, he's now in giving a few things or trying to bring up what he's thinking is business, and how do you now support the one who is starting up are two different things. So when you establish an online platform setting out that information on, number one, young people getting to know the existing incubators programs, and also startups and the processes of registration and admission, this will really help, because we've had a lot of challenges, and I'm hoping one day in this House we shall be able to move from the Attorney General's office the registration of companies and take it to trade, because that is where all companies are working. So you find that registration is even confusing many young people. But if it was in the docket of the Ministry of Trade, then it is easier for young people even to be taken for training, because now the AG is not able to take these people training of companies. So you just register. But if it is in the docket that it is supposed to be, it will be very easy to deal with it. Mr. Speaker, the role of the county is to create policy. And you realize in the counties is where we have a lot of challenges. And so if at the national level we cannot bring in something to support young people, even at the counties it will be very difficult. And so I'm hoping also the counties will be able to understand that they need to bring up a policy on incubation so that it is able to develop that business and even the systems of startup. Mr. Speaker, this bill also comes out and now brings in qualification, those who are qualifying. And so I want to tell young people out there, Mr. Speaker, sometimes you would wish to support young people. But the way now we do it, and also plead with young people. For example, if I give you a startup, you cannot have a startup and in 3 months again, you're back in the hole where you started. You cannot have a startup where we have friends who come in, either they buy you the car wash machine, they buy you the tankers, and in 1 month, Mr. Speaker, they've sold everything. They are back to ground zero. Now, that is why we want this registration, so that in any constituency, when you find an organization that is telling you of young people, we are a startup, you will look at how consistently they've been working. A CBO. I have a CBO, a young man called Adan Andeko. He works specifically with CBOs of young people, mostly dealing with health issues. And so, Mr. Speaker, even as we look at all of them, you find each of them, they have different ideas and innovations. All they need is that incentive. How can we put in an incentive of subsidy, an incentive of credit guarantee, an incentive of capacity building? The German organization right now, GZ, is supporting young people who have come out to say, we want to do this. And they are right now going on with their training. And I have a girl called Vivian, who is there from Kakamega. This is a girl, Vivian decided to just do honey. And GZ came in and supported her fully. But one thing she told me, that the day she was asked, what do you want to do? She said, don't give me money. Buy me the equipment. I want to tell young people, if you want people to support you, do not ask for the resources. Ask for the equipment that you need for you now to start. That way, it will be very, very critical, and they will support you. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, because I know we need to finish for the mover to reply, is that I want to tell my young people in Dagoretti North that it is important to understand when you're in Nairobi, you must do something. And you don't need to be used on boda boda to go and abuse people, to go and beat people. No. Use that boda boda as a place where you can do your business and start building your family. Use that boda boda in a way knowing that is my office. Respect that office of yours. And you'll find people respecting you, Mr. Speaker. Because people forget, boda boda is also a very, very critical transport means in our country. But we need to streamline it and make it worthy for those who use it for their own, as their work of office, where they move in the morning and they are able to do their business. And I now want to plead with this House and even the President. Senator Crystal Asige, being a disabled, has done a lot, Mr. Speaker. She deserves to be recognized, to be given a medal of one of those. Irene Mayaka being a young girl, and we've decided we shall mentor her until she's elected to come back in this House and be one of the leaders in the parliaments that will come, that we must see them being recognized. Let us recognize the young girls, the young women in this house who are doing well. They are our colleagues, but we are our mothers. We must mentor them and push them to do what they are doing. With those few remarks, I beg to support.
The Honorable Sheikh Kasim Tandaza.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii. Kwanza nimpongeze Seneta Asige na Mheshimiwa Irene ambaye ni wiki hii alikuwa na mswada mwingine wa maana zaidi. Karibu ni muunge pia, bali na mikono na kichwa, lakini nikachia hapo. Mheshimiwa Spika, tuna tatizo ambalo ni la kihistoria. Pale ambapo wakati sisi tukisoma, kama mwenzangu alivyotanguliza, ulikuwa ni usome, ukariri yale unayofundishwa, sio kuelewa, ni kukariri yale unayofundishwa, na ukiweza kuyazungumza ama kuyaandika yale uliyokariri, basi unasemekana wewe ni mtu mwerevu, una akili, na wewe ndiye ambaye unafaa sasa kufanya vizuri na hatimaye kupatiwa kazi. Mheshimiwa Spika, hilo tumeishi nalo kwa muda, na mpaka sasa wako baadhi ya wazazi ambao wanaishi katika fikira hizo kwamba mtoto lazima aweze kwenda darasani akariri, na baadaye kama ataweza kuyazungumza ama kuandika yale aliyoyakariri, basi huyo ndiye mtoto mwema. Nafikiri hatua serikali ambayo imechukua kuleta huu mtaala mpya ambao tunasema ni wa CBC una malengo ya watu kuwa wabunifu, na ndio maana mswada huu unakuwa ni wa maana sana wakati huu, kwa sababu ni kama serikali iliweza kuona mapungufu ya yale elimu ambayo tulikuwa tukiwa nayo, kwamba ni wakati kwamba watoto wetu, vijana ambao wako shule, waweze kujifikiria na kubuni mbinu za kimaisha. Na hapa Kenya hatuna upungufu wa ubunifu. Ukiangalia katika eneo langu bunge la Matuga, pale Kombani kuna kijana ambaye kuna vitu vingi sana ameweza kubuni. Kwanza kutengeneza stima, ameweza kubuni ni vipi anaweza kusafisha hewa kama ile ambayo tulikuwa tukifanyia wakati ule wa corona, ili tuweze kupata oksijeni na mambo kama hayo. Lakini watu mara nyingi, sisi pia ndio tuna matatizo, kwa sababu huangalia watu kama wale kwamba wao ni watu ambao hawana akili, hawajiwezi, ndio maana wanafanya vitu vile ambavyo sio vya kawaida. Na ni hivi vitu ambavyo sio vya kawaida ndio ambavyo vinaweza kuleta mafanikio na kuendeleza Kenya, na hatimaye kuweza kuona kwamba vijana wetu wanaweza kujisimamia. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, huu mswada ni wa maana sana kwa wakati huu. Tuna matatizo mengi, na tukiangalia tunakoendelea, sioni kama kuna wakati hata kama uchumi wa Kenya utaweza kuimarika, kwamba watu wote wataweza kuajiriwa na kazi ambayo wataanzia saa 2 asubuhi na kuishia saa 11. Kwa hivyo njia ni hii peke yake ambayo kila mtu, na imani Mwenyezi Mungu, hakuna mtu ambaye alimleta hapa duniani akiwa hana maarifa aliyompatia. Tatizo ni kwamba tumejiweka katika njia moja tu, kwamba ili uwe una maarifa lazima uende shule, usome, kama ni kemia ama ni fizikia ama ni hesabati, basi wewe ndio una maarifa. Lakini Mwenyezi Mungu kila mtu kampatia maarifa yake. Na ombi langu, ili katika huu mswada uwe wa maana, ni sisi tulioko hapa, zile taasisi zingine za serikali zianze kuthamini wale ambao huenda kwamba wanaweza kwenda shule na wasifanye vizuri, lakini wana akili mbadala, wana maono mbadala na wana ubunifu. Na ndio maana nikaunga mswada huu ukilinganishwa na huu mtaala ulioko saa hizi wa CBC ambao unaendelea. Mheshimiwa Spika, ikiwa hii Kenya ni iendelee, lazima tuweze kuwapatia nguvu, kuwaheshimu wale ambao wanataka kuanzisha vitu vipya. Kwa sababu katika biashara ukitaka kunawiri, ni lazima ulete kitu tofauti. Ikiwa hizi biashara ama haya maono ambayo tunataka kuyaunga mkono hapa, ni kwamba mtu labda ataanzisha biashara ile ambayo tayari ipo, labda ni ya duka ama ni ya pikipiki ama ni biashara ambayo pengine ni teksi na mambo kama hayo, kwangu mimi hayo si malengo na wala hayatutupeleka mbele, lakini maono yangu ni kwamba kuwe na wale vijana ambao wana mawazo tofauti na vile ambavyo watu wamezoea kuishi, basi ndio watu ambao tungewalenga kuwapatia msaada, kuwapatia mkono, kuwapatia hizi sehemu ambao tunasema wanaweza kuanzisha biashara zao, wanaweza kupata wataalamu wakaweza kuwaongezea, na serikali iweze kuingilia, sio tu kiwango cha kwamba hata wapatie fedha, lakini waweze pia kuangalia taaluma hii pengine hapa Kenya haihitajiki, lakini kuna nchi ughaibuni ambayo hii taaluma inaweza kusaidia. Je, ni vipi wataweza kuwasaidia hawa vijana ili yale mafikira yao na yale maono yao yaweze kuwa ya maana zaidi? Tuna tatizo ambalo mara nyingi pia huwa linakumba wale ambao wana maono mazuri tofauti na vile ambavyo watu wamezoea. Na hapa pia serikali lazima iwe na jukumu la kuona kwamba wakati kijana ama mtu ambaye amekuja na mfumo mpya ambao tunajua ni wa maana, atalindwa vipi kutokana na zile mashirika makubwa makubwa, wale makampuni kubwa kubwa ambazo wanaweza kuchukua hili jambo na kujinufaisha hiyo. Nikisema hivyo, nina mfano ambao nafikiri sote tunaujua kwamba aliyeanzisha mfumo wa M-Pesa hapo ulimwenguni ilikuwa sio mtu aliyeajiriwa wala hakuwa mtu ambaye anatoka kwa familia kubwa, lakini hapo mashirika yale ambayo yana pesa yakaweza kuchukua fursa hiyo kuweza kununua yale maarifa ya yule kijana na kumlipa, ambao kwa wakati ule kijana aliona amepata pesa nyingi bila kujua kwamba hatimaye hii ni mfumo ambao utakuwa unatambulika ulimwengu mzima na utaleta fedha nyingi ulimwengu mzima, ile hali yeye akibaki kwamba pale hajanufaika zaidi. Kwa hivyo, Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi ninaunga mkono mswada huu na ni malengo kwamba sisi sote tutaweza kutambua kwamba tukiendelea mbele vijana wataweza kunawiri, wataweza kuheshimika endapo wataweza kushikiliwa mkono, tutaweza kuwaunga mkono katika yale mafikira yao tofauti na kuwapatia vitengo kama ambavyo huu mswada umeweza kutekeleza hapa ili Kenya izidi kuendelea mbele. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa fursa hii na naunga mkono.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this startup bill. And let me begin by thanking the Honorable Irene Mayaka and the Senator who are the co-sponsors of this bill that came from the Senate, sponsored by a senator there and co-sponsored by the Honorable Irene Mayaka. And Honorable Irene Mayaka, this is the way to go because you're a young person and many of these startups are businesses owned and run by young people and very young and innovative young people in our country who lack job opportunities in the formal economy, but with these startups they can now become employers themselves and not just seek for employment as employees of other big corporates. And these startups that we are supporting with this bill, or in whose interest we are creating the legal framework to support them, Honorable Speaker, are what will become tomorrow's blue chip companies. And I've had members who've contributed ahead of me giving the case example of the innovators of M-Pesa and what it has become today. But you can imagine if we had this law at that time, and the young people who innovated M-Pesa and other many good innovations that have been grabbed by huge companies around the world, those people today would be the captains of industry in whatever sector they have innovated in. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, if you look at the key objects of this bill, is one, to foster innovative thinking and entrepreneurship in our country. And as I said in thanking Honorable Irene Mayaka, the people who are innovative in thinking, the young entrepreneurs, are largely the young men and women of our country who we will now be able to support through this bill. Two, it seeks to promote an enabling environment, Honorable Speaker, for the establishment and development of a business environment and also a regulation framework for our startups. Honorable Speaker, the bill also seeks to create linkages between startups and financial institutions and other institutions in the country and outside the country. One of the major handicaps for many startups is not having access to capital. And because these startups are being started by young people who have no collateral to offer to banks and other financial institutions, then they lack the capital to be able to grow their ideas, the innovations they create to be able to grow them into ideas that can become income-earning ideas or profitable ventures. Therefore, by having a framework that will create that required linkage between the startups and our financial institutions, we'll be able to very well create a linkage between the many startups that are there and financial institutions and also other institutions that can incubate, including those blue chip companies that can incubate some of these startups to be able to grow up to be real and profitable businesses. Honorable Speaker, access to capital is not a problem just to startups. Even many of our businesses, Honorable Speaker, even grown and growing businesses in our country have challenges in accessing capital. And therefore, it is important that we create that seamless linkage to financial institutions that will support startups and put their money behind ideas. Because what has lacked is people who have the appetite for risk in ideas and innovations. And those who have risked in investing in ideas and innovations, Honorable Speaker, have reaped very well. And therefore, when you create linkages between the startups, financial institutions, big corporates, then you create an environment where people who have good ideas for startups then can access capital, can even access a network of suppliers, a network of customers from other institutions and corporates, and even from the same financial institutions, they will be able to link them up with potential customers for whatever idea, goods, or services that they seek to give. This bill, Honorable Speaker, will also facilitate investments in startups, because once you have a good legal framework that can support investments in startups, it becomes very easy for even other investors, people who are coming into the country with foreign direct investments, to be able to identify potential businesses that are startups in the country that they can access our Kenyan market and the region at large by supporting startups. Honorable Speaker, if you look at clauses 4 to 5 of the bill, it provides for the establishment of incubation programs and the roles of the respective levels of government, the national and county governments are listed in clause 4 and 5. But allow me, Honorable Speaker, to speak about the establishment of incubation programs. This is largely seen as the work largely of the Ministry of Trade and Industry at times. And I know when we look at establishment or investments like the Konza Technopolis, the particular Ministry of ICT that has been developing Konza Technopolis, which with time, Honorable Speaker, Konza Technocity, which we dubbed our own Silicon Valley or Silicon Savannah from the Silicon Valley in the US. This Silicon Savannah, Honorable Speaker, has become a case study, not just for our region, but Africa at large. And this Silicon Savannah, Honorable Speaker, in the future will be what the world will be speaking about. The startups that we will incubate in a place like Konza Technocity and other places, Honorable Speaker, will be businesses that will run economies in Africa and the world economy in the future. And I want to believe we have a very good base with very many well-educated, innovative Kenyans, especially in the tech sector, and I had members, as I was listening in from the office, people saying this bill is too inclined to the tech industry. But that is because that is where most of our young people have skills in, and almost all the innovations around in our country are around the tech sector. And I want to encourage our young men and women in the country to continue being innovative, and we will continue to support them. With these incubation centers, we'll be able to grow businesses from a desk to become multi-billion-dollar companies with time. Because the incubation centers, Honorable Speaker, are not, as I said, centers that will just be based in particular ministries. We are looking also at having incubation centers right down at the county level, and that's why the bill stipulates the respective functions of both levels of government. If you think about the, what were we calling them? The aggregation centers. These aggregation centers around the counties that were being done around the counties, and also the economic zones, the special SEZs, is the one SEZ that I was forgetting, the special economic zones. The special economic zones, be it the one in Eldoret, be it the one in Busia, be it the one in Sagana, now county governments have an opportunity to also use those special economic zones as incubation centers to be able to grow businesses for our young people and young women. You do not need to leave Busia, for instance, to come and look for an incubation center in Nairobi. The special economic zone in Busia, or the special economic zone in Eldoret, or the one in Sagana, with the county government and the national government working together, we can have incubation centers in those special economic zones, and even within the aggregation centers, because these startups, we're not just talking about startups in the tech sector. Think about startups and ideas, innovative ideas around agro-processing. And I can see the Honorable Member for Ainabkoi being very attentive, because he knows the people of Ainabkoi in Uasin Gishu, the young men and women in Monyaka, are people who can be able to have startups around the agro-processing value chain. And using the SEZ or the aggregation centers being established in each of our counties, they can then use these areas as areas where they can start up their businesses, grow them, and they're incubated there and grow them into successful businesses of the future and become employers. They don't need to wait to be employed by anybody. Honorable Speaker, the bill also creates for a very good framework in how the registration of startups. Many young people in this country are taken advantage of. You have a good idea, very innovative idea, but because you do not know even your way around how to register a business, then people take advantage of you, run away with your idea. Now, with the framework that we are creating, they will know and they'll be educated on how you register your startup, how you get admitted into an incubation program, and how you then grow your idea from a startup idea. It is incubated and grows to become a big business, Honorable Speaker. And this also includes the certification of such incubation centers. The incentives that will be given to startups, Honorable Speaker, are also well stipulated in this bill. And this, Honorable Speaker, will include subsidizing the formalization process of such startups, so that we also don't burden people who are getting into business through startups with a lot of formalities, and there are things that will be subsidized to them. And if you read clauses 27 to 32, it covers such incentives. Also, the facilitation and protection of intellectual property, Honorable Speaker, for startups. As I said, a lot of young people are taken advantage of by more established business people who find that there's a young man or a young lady with a good idea, and they don't know how to register intellectual property, and they steal the idea and go and register the intellectual property as their own because they are more established. This bill now will seek to protect such people so that they know how to register and protect the intellectual properties. We also, under the same provisions of this bill, be able to provide both fiscal and non-fiscal support to startups. And fiscal being issues around taxation, Honorable Speaker, we think around what tax incentives do we give to startups? Because also taxation can become a hindrance to the growth of business. and access to capital. Therefore, the bill will provide for both fiscal and non-fiscal support for startups. And of course, targeted incentives for PWDs, for our young people, for women and marginalized groups in our country who are intent and who want to get into startups or to establish startups. Will have very good incentives that will support their business and their growth. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, I beg to support this bill as I thank the Honorable Irene Mayaka and tell Irene Mayaka and the Senator Esther Crystal Asige. I do not know the senator, but from when I read the bill, I got to know the name. I have never been able to put a face to the senator, but I'm told she is also challenged, physically challenged, and I hear the Honorable Catherine Manyo saying she's beautiful. Therefore, she may she may want to introduce me to the beautiful senator. But I was saying, let me thank Senator Sige and the Honorable Irene Mayaka, because being young ladies, they have shown indeed that they don't just speak about young leadership and support for young people. It's not just about talk. It's about bringing legislation that will support young people to become employers, not employees, to become capital owners, not laborers in other people's companies. Irene Mayaka and Senator Sige, congratulations. And we will support this bill as the chair of the Trade Committee, the Honorable Marianne said. The ministry is in support of this bill and the government of Kenya is in support of this bill. And we'll be proposing amendments from the ministry to further enrich this bill because it's a very important bill. And this is, I'm saying this to encourage other first-time MPs to propose legislation. I was telling the member for Katanga yesterday, by the time, and I had Honorable Millie Odhiambo this afternoon speaking about ranking. I was telling the member for Katanga yesterday, by the time as a first-time legislator, you get a bill with your name against it, it takes a long walk. It's a long walk to freedom to get a bill in your name. Because naturally, Honorable Speaker, you know, in the life of every parliament, not more than 10 private members' bills are ever actualized to become acts of parliament. And therefore, when I find beautiful ladies like Irene Mayaka and Senator Sige in their first term in parliament bring such a progressive bill that even the government of Kenya is in support of, is an opportunity to be able to thank these gracious and beautiful ladies and encourage them. And I do hope the people of Nyamira are watching. I hope the people of Nyamira are watching because as Honorable Irene Mayaka is nominated. If the people of Nyamira are watching, then they should know they have a gracious, intelligent, progressive, and focused legislator in in Honorable Irene Mayaka. And Senator Sige, I don't know she's from which county? Mombasa County. The people of Mombasa should also watch and see what Senator Sige is doing, not just for the people of Mombasa, but for many millions of young men and women in this country. And I conclude by saying that together with the Trade Committee and the Ministry of Trade and Industry and the committee and the Ministry of Cooperatives and MSME, we shall be proposing certain amendments to further enrich this bill. And we had a debate with the chair, Marianne, whether to take up this bill as a government bill. And we agreed, let it go in the names of the private members who came up with the bill, because it is good to also have this bill against their names. Therefore, congratulations, and I support Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Kimani, MP for Molo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And from the onset, I would like to really congratulate my two friends, the Honorable CPA Irene Mayaka and the Honorable Crystal Asige, for this very, very progressive bill. And Honorable Speaker, this clearly demonstrates that young people of this country, when given a chance to lead, will and can and shall and do make a difference. And this very progressive bill, the startup bill, being co-sponsored by two very great leaders, is a clear testament that there is a great potential when you lead of young people in this country, and young people can make very, very good decisions for this country, Honorable Speaker. We celebrate them not just because they're young, but because they're intellects, because they have taken their time and hard work to put into their resources on this bill, Honorable Speaker. I would have informed the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, who the Honorable Crystal Asiege is. You know, she's one. She's not just a legislator. She's a musician. You know, one of the most popular songs that was done by Sauti Sol a few years ago. She was the great voice behind that particular song. And it's important to also note she's one of the few people I know who hold a degree in film from University of England. So she's a very learned person. And of course, my fellow CPA, Honorable Irene Mayaka. Honorable Speaker, this bill proposes an establishment of a comprehensive framework that promotes innovation and entrepreneurship in Kenya. It intends to foster an environment that is conducive to startups' growth through fiscal and unfiscal incentives. It is going to encourage both private and public sector investments into the startups. It is going to bridge the gap between research institutions and businesses for commercialization of innovation, Honorable Speaker. This bill also will support marginalized groups. It will ensure equal opportunities for all, irrespective of their gender, of their ethnicity, or their disability. And this is contained in Clause 3 of the objects, Honorable Speaker. Clause 4 and 5 of the bill is establishing what roles the county government and national governments are going to play with the promotion, innovation of technology and transfer across national and county governments, development of incubation programs that should support setups, and creation of policies and mechanisms to facilitate public and private sector collaborations. And lastly, to establish directorates and, most importantly, online platforms for ease of access of resources and information for this particular startup, Honorable Speaker. Clause 5 and 6 is talking about eligibility and admission. We're saying that startups must be registered entities in Kenya, and such as private limited companies, partnerships, all and governmental institutions. I think this is very, very critical. And it's similar to, Honorable Speaker, the debate that we had today and yesterday on my bill on public procurement and disposal of monument bill, that is giving preference to locals, to Kenyans. We must really love ourselves and make sure that the policies and decisions that we make, even as they support foreigners, they support Kenyans first. And so this bill is going to demonstrate innovation and scalability where its headquarters is going to be based in Kenya. The startups that are older than 5 years or subsidies or non-startup entities are not eligible. And this is very, very critical, where these startups that are older than 5 years or entities are subsidiaries of already established entities are not going to be allowed into eligibility as a startup, Honorable Speaker. Clause 7 to 19 is talking about the incentives that have been given to these startups, incubators, and investors, where we're saying that these setups and subsidies will get subsidized registration, fiscal and will get fiscal and fiscal support, will get research and development facilitation, and most importantly, intellectual property protection. Honorable Speaker, we've seen many young people come up with groundbreaking innovations, especially on technology. In fact, there's some young people I met a few years ago, and they claim to have been the brain behind the NEMI system that is being used by the Ministry of Education, but they were never paid, they were never compensated. Someone else stole that technology and benefited, and therefore the young people that had really worked hard for that intellectual property were denied the right, Honorable Speaker. The bill is providing for incubators, grants and aid for research, and including tax concessions for equipment and facilities. Investors also who invest in startups will be given tax relief on capital gains and investment losses, and special visas for foreign direct investment, Honorable Speaker. Clause 17, Clause 10 and 8 is on registration and monitoring framework, where they're saying that there's going to be an establishment of a registrar that will going to maintain a database of these startups, is going to issue certificates of registration and also ensure that there is compliance. The registrars will be at county level, who will decentralize access to registration and resources. saying this, there's going to be a startup maturity framework that will tier and assess startups based on readiness for financial and technical support. And this is very, very key because sometimes we have very good programs, but these programs end up being domiciled in Nairobi, and therefore being domiciled in Nairobi.
What's your point of order, Honorable Sheikh Tandaza?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Is Honorable the Chair budget in order? Chair of Finance, Kimani Kuria. Is he in order that instead of contributing to the bill, he's just taking us reading throughout all the pages of the bill as presented by the initiator of the bill? Is he in order? He seems to be reading the whole bill for us, and we've done that. I thought it was... Yeah. Thank you.
Honorable Kimani, this point of order is being addressed to you. And you are engaging in a serious discussion with the majority leader. You haven't heard what was raised. He wants to know whether it's in order for you to read the bill verbatim. You're only supposed to make some references to it. You're not supposed to read it word for word or letter for letter.
Mr. Speaker,
yes.
I have not read the bill verbatim. One of the challenges that you've seen, and I'm saying this from a point of experience when doing public participation, is that the way the drafting of laws is done is so complex that Kenyans are not able, most Kenyans are not able to understand what it is. And that is why I'm taking time to explain what the bill is about. Because we'll just come here and then we say, this bill is good, it is going to support startups, and someone can ask how. Show us where in the bill it's going to show to support that.
Fair enough.
So
continue,
anybody who follows,
with your contribution.
thank you very much.
Fair
Yes,
enough.
so anybody who follows my proceedings and my debates in Parliament accurately tell me when they meet me on the streets that they are able to understand how drafting is done and how this bill and what these bills mean, rather than just throwing words around and not referencing to the bill.
So you're teaching and informing at the same time.
Yes, so I did mention about technology and transfer, and this is contained on clause 14 to 16, and they're putting up a very good framework of how these startups are going to engage in this technology transfer, because I was saying also one of the challenges that we've had is we have got very good ideas of Kenyans that could support, that could be a solution to someone else, but then that technology transfer is not actually available. And before I was interrupted, I was talking about intellectual property and referencing an actual case of young people who came to see me and said they're the ones who had developed the eTeams platform. I don't know the eTeams platform. The name is probably platform at the Ministry of Education, but that particular platform ended up benefiting other people. So this is going to protect, such entities, Honorable Speaker. One of the challenges that we've also had is we have great programs in this Republic of Kenya, great close, but they're not followed by resources. So where you create a very good program, you say this is going to create employment, but no creation of resources to support that is done. And now this bill now is establishing funds that will be sourced from National Research Fund, that this Parliament will approve allocations to it, and also is going to provide for donation, Honorable Speaker. Another challenge that this bill is addressing, it has been the challenge of accessing credit, because we have businesses, we have startups that have got very brilliant ideas, and because they don't have collateral like others would have, collaterals like title deed or logbooks, and no, they end up not getting accessing credit to do their businesses. And therefore, the proposal now to create credit guarantee schemes, this will really help these particular entities to access credit and therefore really have a great potential, for growth. The bill is also insisting on there must be transparency and accountability in the way the whole management is done, so that we don't have already established entities, already established subsidiaries of multinationals coming and masquerading as startups, at the detriment of other more deserving young people that would, or other businesses that would be able to benefit. So, Honorable Speaker, to wrap it up, again, this is a great contribution to law. Our motto for Parliament is for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, and this bill really speaks to what Parliament is and what Parliament should be. In that, I really support, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute.
The Honorable Sane, MP for the Honorable Sane Ibrahim.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for one to earn a living or to find sustenance, a form of livelihood, it is the mindset of people that one must go through schools and get a recognized degree and thereafter get a white-collar job. A few people live on such livelihood, being in gainful employment. Most of the citizenry earn a living by using their talents. They say wisdom lingers. Even if you are a Harvard graduate, there is the risk of being deschooled over time if you don't fine-tune, perfect, and practice your skill so acquired. But talents are natural. They are inborn. They die with the honor. That is to say, many Kenyans have great ideas, entrepreneurial skills, talents that are God-given, that only requires support to actualize competence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is also the mindset that businesses need colossal amounts of money as a startup capital. That is further than the truth. Business, for sure, 90% of the businesses that have become so successful have started in a small way. Businesses therefore require ideas, working ideas, minds that are workable and that can develop into a profit-making venture, Mr. Speaker. But many a times, such characters who wield the ideas, who have been endowed and gifted with the talent to start such great businesses, have not been cushioned by the state or governments globally. They have been exploited by those who have the money, the resources. If you can remember, Mr. Speaker, in the last general election, the just concluded election in the United States of America, and the core of the campaign was start-up support for businesses, more so the Democratic Party. That has been their manifesto. That is in recognition of the fact that in the society, there is that stratum, that big portion of the society. A prism is bottom heavy, so is the society. Those who are wealthy and endowed are the few on top. And at the bottom are the many who have great ideas, but have not had the chance or the opportunity to walk into a place that can support them in terms of mentoring. So this is a great bill and a great idea. It puts into motion the Kenyan thinking, the ideas of Kenyans, the novel entrepreneurial skills of many Gen Zs will find support in this motion, Mr. Speaker. As has been said earlier, the M-Pesa owner, the genuine owner, has been hijacked, and somebody somewhere or a corporate entity is benefiting, raking billions of money. That's how vulnerable the owners of ideas are in Kenya, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if these people are not supported, great ideas, great minds, great thinking will go to waste. It's good to have an inventory of innovation and attempts, trials that do happen on daily basis, Mr. Speaker. A startup ordinarily means putting into a motion an idea from its nascent stage to when it will develop and evolve into a big, thriving business entity, which has been the history of any corporate, big corporate today, so recognized in the world. They were not meteoric. They did not just happen. They grew, they started small, and today they are big, global, universal, rather. So it doesn't mean that Kenyans equally have ideas that can go global if nurtured and supported. This startup bill, therefore, is a very good bill. And I believe it will also coalesce, it will also bring together many of the initiatives so done by the government, Mr. Speaker. We have had the Hustler Fund. We have had the Uwezo Fund. We have had the Women Enterprise Fund. All these are attempts, haphazard attempts to finding a way of helping the middle class who are unemployed and who need great support for their taxes, the taxpayers. This is a motion that is taxpayer friendly. Taxpayer friendly. This is a bill that goes in for the lowest. This is indeed the hustler bill, if only we bring all that we have done in the past 2 years together and we synchronize and synergize this bill to house the entire, the many attempts that we have had so far. Mr. Speaker, it talks of incentives, tax incentives, subsidies, credit guarantees, good things, and more so capacity building. I love the confluence of financial support and capacity building. That is a good support. You are given the financial support, the incentives, and here you are given the capacity building. Capacity building is about mentorship, being linked to somebody who has been successful, a company that has thrived. The accompaniment you require to grow towards your dream. That is a good initiative and so welcome, Mr. Speaker. This bill proposes a research fund to help the many skills in the villages, in the remote parts of this country. Great minds. From where I come from, Mr. Speaker, I know of an illiterate youngster who has been talented to repair phone calls, even without going to school. He comes in whenever the genset, the generator for Kenya Power and Lighting Company, goes down. The same person is always available and fixes the generator, even when those who have gone to school did not. For me, I believe this motion is welcome and it's a nice one.
Order, Honorable Tandaza.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. From where I sit, is the member in order to refer to somebody who can repair phones, who can repair generators, and still call him illiterate? What definition is he using to call that genius an illiterate, Honorable Chair?
Order, Honorable Tandaza. Order, Honorable Tandaza. Sheikh Kasim Tandaza, Honorable. The definition of illiterate is there. It means somebody who cannot read and write. It's not always, you don't have to be able to read and write for you to have skills. Proceed, Honorable Sari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You so answered very well. I didn't talk of intellect. I talked of literacy or illiteracy. He who that did not go to a formal school is declared illiterate because he cannot or she cannot read and write. So being an intellectual is so different from, Mr. Speaker, without meandering much. This is a wonderful bill that requires support of everybody, and I join in my colleagues. It has the potential, just like the TVET that has been initiated by His Excellency the President, to absorb quite a number of our youth who do not go to the university, to get the skills so required for gainful employment and ECA living. This equally will absorb quite a number of Kenyans, middle level, down at the level, at the bottom of the pyramid. And it will offer employment opportunities through business initiatives. With those few remarks, I support. Thank you, sir.
Honorable members. You are on a point of order? Yeah, what's your point of order?
Yes, Speaker, this is a very important bill, Speaker, since it requires to be attended and to be paid attention by all Kenyans. Because if you look at it, it's talking of startup, beginning. And if I look at the House, Speaker, I can see that we don't have adequate quorum as per on the
Are you raising a quorum?
95, on the 95
So it's very
of
simple.
the standing orders.
So
This is a...
Order, honorable member.
Yes, Speaker.
Have you raised the issue of quorum?
Yes, quorum. Because
Okay, fair enough. That's done it. I mean, we have, I can see we don't have quorum. I will direct that the sergeant at arms rings the bell for 10 minutes. You want me to cross my eyes? He says you cross your eyes.
Because, Speaker, once you ring the bell for 10 minutes, it will be past 7. So what do we do after that?
So you close your eyes, you say, we have to not be past 7.
What is the time?
Be just before 7.
Yeah, before 7, yeah?
Yeah, then of course we
So you can't even reply.
No, you can't reply. I was hoping you would reply. And I was also hoping I could give chance to another 3 or 4 MPs who are interested in
And we are just seated here for circle. Eh? Then the bar comes in.
Obara there, Eva Obara there. So basically, it's, you have no choice. The speaker does not see anything, does not see anything. He's told. So if you have told that this is under 95, then.
And you know I came in before last week.
Timad.
Huh? Yeah.
Well, we could, I know you're after us, so I was going to go.
Hata kadi yangu liko huko.
Kadi yako umetoa. I can see your name.
It is there.
Umetoa. Kwenda angalia. Members, there being no quorum, the time being 6:53 p.m., understanding order number 35, we have no other business other than to adjourn this house. The house now stands adjourned until Friday, the 29th of November, the year 2024, at 9:30 a.m.